Chapter 882. Regarding the Blood Soul Temple, Ling Xiao had always felt that this force was most likely controlled by the Divine Master. The Cloud-Gathering Merchant Alliance controlled wealth, the Heaven's Secret Sect controlled life and death, and the Blood Soul Temple controlled information. With the help of these three forces, the Divine Master's position was stable. However, Ling Xiao had already met the Cloud-Gathering Alliance's master. The Cloud-Gathering Alliance wanted to break away from the Saint Sect's control. In this 1 year, Ling Xiao had ordered his Dark Guards to make arrangements in secret, adding fuel to the fire so that Alliance Master Su would be firm in his decision. The 8 God Emperors of the Heaven's Secret Sect, including the Sect Master Duvi Yunjin, had died in Ling Xiao's hands. Now, only the Blood Soul Temple remained hidden from the world and had yet to be wiped out. However, compared to the Blood Soul Temple's master's methods, this mysterious force was truly difficult to deal with. Unfortunately, with Bai Ling's submission, Ling Xiao had taken control of the Blood Soul Temple's elders, who were in charge of distributing missions. No matter whether Bai Ling could plant the soul imprint on the temple master, his fate was sealed. Buzz! A buzzing sound suddenly came from the distance. Ziyan's figure descended from the sky and landed beside Ling Xiao. Young master. At this moment, she seemed to be in a difficult position. When do you plan to go to Central Border to find Miss? I've already given the dragon bone to Shi'er to refine. As long as she can completely merge with it, it will be the time for us to enter Central Border. Ling Xiao smiled. He could understand the worry in Ziyan's heart. If she wasn't loyal, she wouldn't have forced him to become the Sea Emperor. After all, if it wasn't for life, who would be willing to be exhausted? However, this matter couldn't be rushed. At the very least, Ling Xiao had to ensure that the situation was clear before he dared to make the final gamble. But young master, Ziyan's face was anxious, but Ling Xiao only calmly glanced at her. Instantly, she panicked and lowered her head. She had already seen Ling Xiao's scheming. This youth would never do something he wasn't confident in. This subordinate has overstepped his boundaries. Then how should I punish you? Ling Xiao smiled wickedly, and before Ziyan could react, he had already pulled her into his embrace. Young master, I am a young lady's maidservant. I cannot. In the future, you two will serve each other as master and servant. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? Ling Xiao shook his head and lowered his head, sealing Ziyan's words back into her mouth. Their eyes met. Even though Ziyan was a rank 9 divine emperor, a trace of shyness appeared in her eyes. However, she suddenly lost all of her strength. Meow, 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 meow. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. During these 7 days, Han Qingxiu, Lin Meng, and the other girls came out of seclusion. What surprised Ling Xiao was that the first one to break through to the Divine King realm was actually Ning Er. At the same time, her luck had increased to 7,000. After her, Phoenix Rouge and Han Qingxiu had 6,000 luck. Lin Meng had slightly less with 5,000 luck. Since they were all divine kings, one could tell whose talent was more terrifying by looking at their luck. With the help of the girls' breakthroughs, Ling Xiao's luck also increased by 3,000, and his villain's luck increased by 30,000. Of course, with the girls' talent, the 10 dragon veins in this realm, and the endless amount of spirit pills and spiritual materials, it was within Ling Xiao's expectations that they would become divine kings. What a joke. Even a pig would be able to take human form if fed with 10 rank 6 spirit pills every day. Peace reigned in the realm. Ling Xiao sat on the shore of the great marsh lake, holding a bamboo pole in his hand. He calmly looked at the ripples in the distance. At a certain moment, the bamboo pole suddenly drooped and became taut. Ling Xiao smiled calmly and raised his hand. A blue whale leaped out of the water. It was several tens of meters long, and it created layers of waves. Young master is awesome. Behind him, Phoenix Rouge and the other girls clapped excitedly. Their eyes flickered with a trace of anticipation. In the distance, Han Qingqiu knelt on the ground, burning incense and brewing tea. A faint smile also appeared on her face. It seemed that there was seafood to eat again. I'll eat you tonight. Ling Xiao smiled faintly. He pulled the whale out of the lake and smashed it on the shore. At this moment, in the depths of the realm, a blood-red light suddenly shot into the sky. Thunderclouds gathered in a radius of 1,000 miles and pressed down. Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly, and the smile on his face grew wider. Rouge, forget it. Go to the medicine hall and pick some fresh, immortal mushrooms, immortal ginger, and some 1,000-year-old Lingji mushrooms and ginseng. Call Han Zhan over and deal with his fish. Ming, cut down a few trees and burn them into charcoal according to the method I taught you. Qingxiu, gather everyone by the lake. Tonight, we will have a party. Yes, young master. Hearing this, a smile appeared on the faces of the girls. Such a nutritious fish and fish soup. After eating it, during this month, they were all in seclusion. It was really boring. It seemed that after the party last time, the young master had rewarded them well. Ling Xiao took a step forward, and his figure instantly disappeared from the spot. The god-slaying war was imminent. It was unknown how many of the powerhouses in the realm would eventually follow him to the upper realm. After all, not all of them would go. The path of immortality was long, and all living beings were slaves. They would fight with their lives. He had given everyone endless opportunities. It was time for them to sacrifice their lives in this war. When Ling Xiao's figure appeared under the thunderclouds, he saw a red-robed figure sitting cross-legged on an ancient mountain in the distance. His white hair fluttered in the wind. Around him, blood-red qi gushed out like an ocean, faintly turning into a demonic figure. He held the descending lightning with one hand and easily crushed it. In the sea of blood, the immortal extermination sword bloomed with a clear light. It was leisurely and dazzling, maintaining an immortal charm in the demonic intent. At this moment, Ling Tian's aura was extremely strange. The immortal and demonic Tao were clearly separated. In fact, after stepping into the divine king realm, Ling Tian's aura did not stop at all. It was still rising. Looks like he won't be able to break through in a short time. Ling Xiao shook his head. Ling Tian's talent was already the strongest in this realm. Now, he had coincidentally obtained the Blood Emperor's inheritance. The Blood Demon's immortal body was known as the strongest body in the 9 heavens. Once he mastered it, his cultivation would definitely rise qualitatively. It was not impossible for him to become a divine emperor in one step. System, at a point to the dark heaven ancient scripture. Accompanied by a buzzing sound, Ling Xiao's body also bloomed with immortal radiance. The Taoist rhyme stretched for thousands of miles. Boom! At a certain moment, there was a sudden clap of thunder, and spiritual might descended from the heavens. Everyone raised their heads in shock and looked towards the depths of the realm. At this moment, there were 2 distinct colors on the peak of the sky. One was a sea of blood, with waves tens of thousands of feet high. The other was darkness, avoiding the brilliance of the sun and moon. Ling Xiao and Ling Tian opened their eyes at the same time. The 2 demonic intents turned into demonic shadows, stepping on heaven and earth and looking down at the sea. At this moment, Ling Xiao had already entered the 6th stage of the Divine Emperor realm. Although Ling Tian had not directly entered the Divine Emperor realm, he had also reached the threshold of the Divine Emperor realm, the 9th stage of the Divine King realm. With such talent, he was already invincible in the Shenzhou. However, in front of Ling Xiao, he was still very weak. Brother. Ling Tian stood up and looked at the black-clothed figure above him. His face suddenly bloomed with radiance. You want to try again? Ling Xiao smiled indifferently. He was also curious about Ling Tian's current combat strength. Yes, I want to test it out with brother. Chapter 883. Come. Ling Xiao smiled gently, his expression still calm. As the son of destiny, it was normal for him to kill enemies of a higher realm. However, with his current strength, he only needed 1 luck plunder card to kill Ling Tian. 10,000 luck plunder was really tempting. Brother, be careful. Ling Tian's eyes flashed with a bloody light. He held the ancient sword in his hand and suddenly disappeared. Even when he appeared about 10 feet above Ling Xiao's head, there was still no spiritual light fluctuation on the latter's body. Ling Tian panicked, and a trace of hesitation appeared in his heart. If he really used his full strength, what should he do if he really injured his brother? At this moment, Ling Xiao suddenly stretched out his hand. There seemed to be thousands of demonic runes circling around his palm. It instantly pierced through the void and pressed toward Ling Tian's heart. This palm strike seemed ordinary, but contained boundless killing intent that encompassed the primordial era, the vast stars, the mountains, and the rivers. Even Ling Tian's eyes showed a trace of fear and shock. He hurriedly swung his sword and slashed down. Buzz! The sound of a sword suddenly resounded between heaven and earth. The layers of the void shattered, and a celestial figure stepped out. Divine light lingered around it, as if an immortal had descended to the world. It contained a majestic aura that could destroy heaven and earth. What was even more frightening was that although this celestial figure's Taoist rhymes overlapped, its eyes were strangely bloody. Immortal and demon as one, unique in the world. Boom! 3,000 sword lights broke the infinite avatars. Just the sword intent alone cut the entire sky into pieces. Wherever the sword light passed, space turned into an abyss, revealing a bone-chilling coldness. However, just as the immortal extermination sword fell, Ling Xiao suddenly clenched his fist and directly grasped the sword's edge in his palm. Boom! The thousands of sword intents suddenly collapsed, and even the bloody aura around Ling Tian's body froze at this moment. How is this possible? Ling Tian stood in the void in a daze. His eyes were wide open, filled with indescribable shock. Half-step God the Arch, ancient demon inheritance, immortal slaying sword, perfected Tao laws. Every one of these could be said to be heaven-defying and ancient. In fact, Ling Tian was confident that with his current sword Tao, he would be invincible within a 3-foot radius. However, his brother had only used his palm to block his sword. In particular, the coldness on Ling Xiao's face was like a merciless whip, causing his previously proud heart to instantly turn cold. Ling Xiao abruptly pulled Ling Tian in front of him and gave him a tight slap on his face. Ling Xiao did not use any spiritual power in this palm strike, nor did he use much strength. It was like a kind of intimidation. Even so, a trace of blood still flowed down from the corner of Ling Tian's mouth, and his aura instantly weakened. "I'm sorry, brother. I've disappointed you again." At this moment, Ling Tian's heart was undoubtedly in agony. He knew that under Ling Xiao's cold exterior, there were great expectations for him. But from a beginning to the end, although he tried his best to catch up, he was casually crushed by Ling Xiao every time. This blow did not affect Ling Tian's Tao heart. Instead, it was the disappointment in his brother's eyes that caused him to be in so much pain that he wished he was dead. "Brother, I'm useless. I'm not worthy of your love and care. I slapped you not because you're weak. It doesn't matter if you're weak. I have millions of spirit pills and 10 dragon veins. I can give them all to you. As long as you're willing to work hard, you'll step onto the peak of the world sooner or later." Ling Xiao sighed softly, a trace of disappointment flashing in his eyes. "Brother," Ling Tian lowered his head and gritted his teeth. Even his body was trembling. "I slapped you because of your hesitation just now. As a swordsman, when you hold a sword, everyone in this world is your enemy. You didn't let me down. What you let down is the sword in your hand." With that, Ling Xiao no longer hesitated and turned to walk towards the shore of the lake. On the other hand, Ling Tian stood there in a daze, staring at the ancient sword in his hand. Suddenly, a resplendent sword radiance shot into the sky. In the next moment, thousands of sword intents descended and poured into his body. Blood dripped, and Beifeng whimpered. There was no trace of pain on Ling Tian's face. Instead, there was a hint of shock and excitement. He sat down cross-legged again, as if he had fallen into a strange state. "Young master," at the shore of the lake, Phoenix Rouge, Lin Ming, Bai Shi, Han Zhan, Chun Qingshan, and the others all stood up and bowed respectfully to Ling Xiao. Further away, Xiong Huan, Liang Yi, Folded Shadow, Nine Nether, Xiao Beifa, Xing Shun, and the others stood in front of the ancient forest with extremely respectful expressions. Master, this well has been cleaned up. Han Zhan bowed and stepped aside, revealing the demonic whale behind him with its stomach cut open. This whale was the young master of the Emperor Whale clan. Originally, Ling Xiao had kept it here, preparing to eat it when it became an emperor. He didn't expect to fish it up today. It could only be said that when fate arrived, it would be difficult for it not to die. Put the spiritual materials into the whale's body and cover it with charcoal. Where's Xiao Qiu? Master, I'm always by your side. Xiao Qiu walked out of the crowd with a solemn expression and bowed to Ling Xiao. Cut a few plates of sashimi for everyone to try. Yes, Master, this is the wine and spirit fruit offered by the various demon clans. Nine Nether took out hundreds of jars of wine from his universe ring and placed them in front of Ling Xiao. Come, raise the wine. Ling Xiao smiled faintly, and a powerful aura suddenly surged from his body. Then, his figure slowly rose into the air and stood above everyone's heads. Everyone, soon, the final battle to overthrow the sacred sect will begin. The Divine Master is tyrannical and kills indiscriminately. Although we follow the demonic path, we must seek justice for the world. Today, I will drink with all of you. Regardless of life or death, this battle will be recorded in the history of Xingzhou. With that, Ling Xiao picked up the wine jar and drank it in one gulp. At this time, his voice was wrapped in spiritual power and had already spread throughout the territory. Hearing this, everyone's faces were filled with excitement. A gentleman would die for his bosom friend. Even if everyone in this territory was Ling Xiao's loyal servant, morale was especially important when the battle was about to begin. Look, this jar of wine had given them the confidence to face death unflinchingly. Although they were all demons, many of them were not people who would kill the innocent. And Ling Xiao only needed to give them a word of encouragement, and it was enough for them to die willingly. If everyone in the world dies to help me defeat the immortals, it could be considered a worthy death. If not for the fact that Double Shadow and the others already knew Ling Xiao's true colors, they would have been convinced by his righteousness and willingness to die for the world. Damn, what's there to say? Young master, righteous. There's no need to cultivate today. Drink to your heart's content. Xiao Qiu, serve the meat. Yes, master. For a time, the territory was filled with jubilation. Even the blood guards and shadow guards were given meat and wine to drink to their heart's content. On the other hand, Ling Xiao secretly gave Han Qingqiu, Lin Meng, Ziyin, Huahua, and the others a look and flew towards the heavenly lake. At the peak of the ancient mountain, the starlight was dazzling, illuminating the heavenly lake like a beautiful jade. In the heavenly lake, Ling Xiao was half naked and leaning against the shore. He held a wine jar in one hand and hugged Han Qingqiu in the other. Beside him, Lin Meng's face was slightly red as she tasted a bowl of white soup in her hand. Further away, Ziyin was holding a green zither and playing a song composed by Wenruyu with her eyes closed. The sound of the zither was melodious, neither sad nor sorrowful. It was a kind of determination of life and death. Only Phoenix Rouge was holding a withered branch in her hand with a hateful expression. She looked at the pot of shark fin spirit ginseng on the fire and occasionally looked at Ling Xiao with resentment. The life of a villain was so simple and boring. Chapter 884. Another 10 days passed. It wasn't until a golden radiance suddenly shot into the sky somewhere in the realm that Ling Xiao walked out of the heavenly pool and looked up at the 1,000-foot-long divine dragon's shadow in the void. In the next instant, his figure suddenly disappeared from where he was and appeared under the dragon's shadow. Xi'er. Ling Xiao saw that under the endless divine light, Xi'er's body was shrouded in mist, and Tao patterns and divine elephants appeared alternately. There was a faint, heart-palpitating aura of heaven and earth gushing out from the girl's body. It was obvious that Xi'er had completely fused with the dragon bone. Young master, She opened her beautiful eyes, which flashed with undisguised joy. It was not until she had fused with the bone that she understood what an amazing opportunity Ling Xiao had given her. The dragon bone contained the great Tao's holy will, and there was a kind of endless and immortal fluctuation of spiritual vigor. Not bad. Ling Xiao smiled gently, but a murderous aura suddenly flashed in the depths of his eyes. After resting for half a month, did you think I only listened to music, drank wine, and slept with beauties? Half a month ago, Ling Xiao had already sent a secret guard to the east, west, and south borders with his token. He had gathered the experts of the three borders and secretly rushed to the border of the central border to wait for his orders. Folded Shadow had personally entered the central border to search for information. Moreover, this period of time was also an opportunity for Ling Xiao to test Ming Yuan. Since the sacred sect had not taken any action, it was likely that the saintess of the sacred sect had not betrayed him. The divine master was in seclusion at the right time. The four borders were under his control, and he had the geographical advantage. There were also thousands of experts who were willing to die. It was a harmonious situation. Ling Xiao had the right time, the right place, and the right people. This battle would be a great victory. It's time to move to the central border. The corners of Ling Xiao's mouth curled up into a smile as he looked at the red-robed figure who was sitting cross-legged in the distance. When he woke up from the sword heart, it would be time for him to become of the arch. There was a sudden gust of wind in the sky above the northern border. A dragon's shadow swept across the sky and stepped on the clouds. At the same time, countless tyrannical auras in the four borders walked out of the main hall and the mountains and gathered in the central border. Although these people's cultivations were supreme, they had deliberately hidden their tracks. But for some inexplicable reason, the entire Shenzhou suddenly became strangely quiet. Like an ink painting, only black and white could be seen. Even the commoners felt a sense of oppressive terror. Look, it's getting dark. Lord Ling Xiao, Yi Qingchan is currently in the Holy Church. She has been suppressed and sealed by the Lord God. Just as Ling Xiao arrived at the border of Central Border, Ming Yuan's voice suddenly came from the voice transmission talisman. Oh, Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly, but there was a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. He had already guessed this outcome. Ling Xiao guessed that the reason the Divine Master did not kill Yi Qingchan had something to do with her identity. No matter how Yi Qingchan escaped with her life last time, she had never attracted the attention of the Foliaceae. Perhaps Zhou Yandao had deliberately let her reincarnate. Otherwise, how could he have predicted that Yi Qingchan had returned to the Shenzhou and sent the four divine envoys into the central border to hunt her down? There must be some secrets that Ling Xiao did not know about. Zhou Yandao has set up a formation to refine Yi Qingchan and the Immortal Promotion Plateau together. Lord Ling Xiao, if you want to save Lord Yi, you'd better hurry. Oh, a spy from the Holy Church reported that a large number of experts had gathered in the four borders. I suppressed this matter. Ming Yuan's voice was low as she hurriedly cut off the voice transmission. Ling Xiao's eyes flashed with a hint of contemplation. In the end, he did not rush to the Holy Church. Instead, he landed at the foot of a barren mountain in the central border. Although Yi Qingchan's luck was not as good as Ling Tian's, it was still extremely terrifying. She would not die for a while. Now that he had just entered the central border, although he was fearless, he had to be cautious. Villains died because of carelessness. Since the Blood Soul Temple was the Divine Master's lackey, Ling Xiao had no reason not to uproot it. Moreover, there was still no news from Bai Ling. Could it be that she had been exposed? My lord. Layered Shadow's figure descended from the sky and bowed deeply to Ling Xiao. Did something big happen in the central border? Ling Xiao looked at a green, ancient mountain in the distance. It was hidden in the clouds, illusory, but inexplicably revealed a touch of immortal charm. Yes, this mountain was called Green Mountain. It was where the Blood Soul Temple's sect was located. However, this mountain was enveloped in a layer of illusory formation. Those who were not at the peak of the spirit realm could not see it. My lord, since the Divine Master went into seclusion, The various forces in the central border have been rather stable. Also, layered shadow hesitated, but Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly. Also what? The cloud-gathering business alliance secretly colluded with several sects in a futile attempt to escape the control of the Holy Church. According to your orders, the secret guards have already leaked the information. That's right. Ling Xiao nodded indifferently, his expression indifferent. From the first time he met Su Wenye, he could see that this person was ambitious. The Su family controlled the lifeline of the Shengzhou's wealth and spirit. They had operated the business alliance for hundreds of years and had long been the richest family in the Shengzhou. However, so what if the Su family was rich and could rival a country? In the eyes of the Holy Church, or rather, the Divine Master, the Su family was just a tool to accumulate wealth. The Holy Church could casually send out an 8th or 9th grade Divine Emperor to easily destroy this rich family. Then, they could casually support another family to completely replace the Su family. In the end, the Su family had countless treasures. It was also because of this accumulation of wealth that they gradually lost their minds. In the cultivation world, the strong were the foundation of a family. Wealth and weapons were just external objects. In the past hundreds of years, the Su family had relied on the wealth of treasures to recruit countless strong people to work for them. However, when this kind of work was like throwing an egg against a rock, who would be willing to die? Was it difficult to choose between treasures and life? Therefore, Ling Xiao had long expected the Su family's destruction. He just secretly pushed Su Wenye. Back then, he used the chess game as the world and deliberately disturbed Su Wenye's mind. It could be said that he used the identity of a bystander to completely make Su Wenye rebel. His goal was to use the Su family's wealth to bring chaos to the Shengzhou. However, Su Wenye's patience and cautiousness were slightly out of Ling Xiao's expectations. In the past 3 years, he only revealed his ambition a few days ago and was no longer tolerated by the Holy Church. The Su family tried to use spirit stones and treasures to rope in the 3 ancient sects of the central border. My secret guards have secretly handed this matter and the evidence to the Holy Church. Layered Shadow smiled eerily. This business alliance only had interest in their eyes. However, in this immortal path, all living beings fought for immortality and longevity, not treasures. And then, the Holy Church ordered that whoever carries Su Wenye's head will receive the Su family's inheritance and become the new rich family of the Shengzhou. How is the Su family now? Ling Xiao nodded slightly. He didn't care at all whether Su Wenye was dead or not. However, Su Yan's luck was on the list, and he was proficient in management. In the future, he might be of great use. Since he wanted to obtain everything of the Su family legitimately, he couldn't avoid Su Wenye no matter what. However, Ling Xiao couldn't kill this person. Otherwise, Su Yan would definitely bear a grudge. Therefore, he could only trouble the Holy Church. Oh, or rather, the one who killed him wasn't the Holy Church or Ling Xiao, but greed. As for why the Holy Church didn't directly kill the Su family, there were only 2 reasons. After all, the rich family was supported by the Divine Master to deter other forces. However, once they betrayed the Holy Church, they would become the enemy of the whole world. In order to maintain their prestige, why would the experts of the Holy Church do something like killing people and exterminating an entire family? The Su family has a deep foundation. There are 81 spiritual arrays set up in the family land. Now that the experts of the 3 sects and 4 families of the central border have joined forces to besiege them for several months, they have broken through 80. There's still one more? Then there's no hurry. Ling Xiao smiled gently and turned his head to look at the green mountain in the distance. Holy Temple of Blood Soul. I wonder what cultivation level and identity this temple master has. Chapter 885. Now that the Divine Master is in seclusion and several major forces are surrounding the Su family, I'm afraid there are no experts in the sect. Ziyan, Xionghuan, Xiaope, and Rouge. Ling Zhao's eyes flashed, and 3 figures walked out from behind him. The 4 of you, Come with me to visit these ancient sections. Yes, master. Ziyin and the others bowed, and Ling Zhao's Dao body immediately stepped into the air and flew towards the central border. This kind of shady business of raiding someone's home shouldn't be too flamboyant, or it will be disrespectful to them. With Ziyin, Xionghuan, Xiao Pe, and Phoenix Rouge following him, Ling Xiao could easily crush any force in the central border except for the sacred sect. Not to mention, most of these experts were besieging the Su family to replace them. In the most sacred central border of Shangzhou, no one would have thought that someone would dare to act so recklessly. Previously, Ling Xiao was still worried that the experts of the four borders would definitely cause a big commotion in the central border. But now that Meng Yuan, the sacred sect saintess, cooperated with them, it saved Ling Xiao a lot of trouble. Of course, this chess piece was at most a scratch ticket. With her around, the general situation was set. The three ancient sects and two ancient clans, regardless of their background, were most likely loyal to the sacred sect. Otherwise, they wouldn't have monopolized the central border, the land of the Shangzhou's dragon blessing. Slaughter them to prevent any changes. What? I'm cruel? If it weren't for the greed in the hearts of the experts from the various sects and ancient clans, would they have left me with such a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? My little rich woman, Su Yin, you just need to be at ease and inherit the Su family's billions of assets. I've taken revenge for Uncle in advance. Let's go. It's time to meet this mysterious master of the Blood Soul Temple. Ling Zhao's eyes were clear as he raised his head to look at the void. He lifted his foot and walked towards the distant mountain. Now that the experts of the four borders had arrived at the central border, as long as he gave the order, countless god emperors would step out from the void and sacrifice their lives for him. The Blood Soul Temple Master was indeed mysterious and extraordinary. He was even more mysterious than Duge Yunjin. Unfortunately, the only one in the Shangzhou who could truly threaten Ling Xiao was the Divine Master. Buzz! Until the young man's figure descended from the sky, looking at the azure ancient mountain that was so close yet so far away. This mountain was faintly discernible, retreating with each step. In other words, as long as you take a step forward, the mountain will take a step back. If an ordinary person were to reach this level, even a God Emperor expert would never be able to touch the Tao. However, such an illusion was meaningless in front of Ling Xiao. He gently clenched his fist, and the divine talisman of the world-piercing talisman instantly bloomed with a mysterious light. A wisp of clear light rippled leisurely, and the various illusions in front of him instantly dissipated. A straight mountain path extended from the top of the mountain to the foot of the mountain. What surprised Ling Xiao was that he did not detect a trace of spiritual power fluctuation at the gate of the Blood Soul Temple. Could it be that Bai Ling was really exposed? So much so that this force had abandoned this sect? Master, there is an expert on the mountain. A hoarse voice suddenly sounded in Ling Zhao's ears. Gue Ying's means were originally in the dark, and his control of space was not something Ling Xiao could compare to. Can Gue Jiang be killed? Master, rest assured, I am invincible below the venerable realm. Hearing this, Ling Xiao no longer hesitated. He lifted his foot and walked along the mountain path toward the hall at the top of the mountain. On the ancient path of the mountain, the young man in black walked calmly. At this moment, he was alone, but he was not frightened. He was like an immortal who walked on the mountain. You're finally here. In front of the Blood Soul Temple at the top of the mountain, an old man sat in front of the table, gently sipping the tea in his cup. At this moment, he did not look at Ling Xiao. His eyebrows were indifferent, and there were wisps of Tao rhymes circulating around his body, which coincided with the way of heaven. A ninth-grade divine emperor. However, a little different from what Ling Xiao had imagined. The master of the Blood Soul Temple did not have a trace of evil aura. Even his appearance was kind and amiable, like an ordinary old man. His hair and beard were white, and they were tied up in a bun behind his head. He looked radiant, and his chi and blood were vigorous. You knew I was coming? Ling Xiao smiled faintly. He walked to the front of the hall, and there was no trace of nervousness on his face. "You are much younger than I thought. Tell me, what kind of cultivation skill do you practice? Even my Blood Soul Saint skill could not break it." The master of the Blood Soul Temple drank up his tea, and then he looked up at Ling Xiao. A wisp of crimson light rose from the bottom of his eyes, and in an instant his eyes turned completely crimson. At the same time, there was a sea of blood in Ling Xiao's eyes, which was about to devour his soul sea. But, in the twinkling of an eye, the sea of blood dissipated, and Ling Xiao's lips curled into a faint sneer. "Eh!" The master of the Blood Soul Temple frowned slightly, and there was a flash of surprise on his face. As a ninth-grade divine emperor, no one could stop his illusory skill. How old was the young man in front of him? 20 years old? How could he get rid of his pupil's skill so easily? "You really surprise me more and more." The master of the Blood Soul Temple nodded slightly. He had noticed Ling Xiao when he appeared at the foot of Mount Qingsong. However, he could not figure out how a young man had the courage to walk in front of him alone. 30 years in the East, 30 years in the West. This was something he knew. However, when outsiders entered this mountain, no one had ever left alive. When a master of the Blood Soul Temple noticed Elder Li's abnormality, he had guessed the reason. Bai Ling sneaked down the mountain and went to the Eastern Territory. She was the only one in the Blood Soul Temple who had the courage to betray him. After all, he had seen the girl's character since she was a child. She was 1 in a million. Otherwise, he would not have tried so hard to recruit her. In addition, the swordsman he sent to kill the Lin clan had been missing for a long time. Bai Ling must have known something by chance. However, the master of the Blood Soul Temple had thought that he could easily break Bai Ling's sea of soul and find the real person behind the scenes. However, he had failed. The master of the Blood Soul Temple had only seen that kind of soul restriction spell on the Divine Master. However, the Divine Master had no reason to control the Blood Soul Temple. Therefore, he had been waiting for Ling Xiao to come to Mount Qingsong so that he could ask about the mystery of the soul skill. The shackles of the way of heaven prevented all beings from becoming venerables. However, he had taken a different path and cultivated the soul illusory skill. In this way, even if he had no hope of becoming venerables, he could still look down on the Emperor God realm. "Where is Bai Ling? What did you do to her?" Ling Xiao's eyes were clear and calm. At this moment, he could feel an extremely weak aura in the hall in the distance. He felt uneasy. When the Lin clan was annihilated, there was a young man who escaped with his life. His whereabouts were unknown. Later, I sent people to search for him, but they never found any trace of him. "If I'm not wrong, you're Bai Ling's brother, Lin? She right?" The master of the Blood Soul Temple smiled, as if he had already seen through everything. In other words, in his eyes, the strongest person in the Shengzhou land was the Divine Master. Why should he care about others? What's more, this was Mount Qingsong, the Central Territory. What kind of storm could a teenager who was only 19 or 20 years old cause? The Divine Master controls the world. The Su family is in charge of wealth, and the first Divine Envoy is in charge of killing. If I'm not wrong, you should also be a member of the Saint Sect, in charge of the intelligence of the Shengzhou land. Ling Xiao smiled gently, but the master of the Blood Soul Temple's face suddenly turned cold. Chapter 886. You know quite a lot. Unfortunately, in this world, the more secrets you know, the sooner you die. The master of the Blood Soul Temple sneered and clapped his hands. A young man in a blood-red robe suddenly walked out of the Blood Soul Temple. He grabbed a thin figure with one hand and walked to Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao's eyes narrowed slightly, but his face didn't change much. Before he came, he had guessed that Bai Ling had been caught by the master of the Blood Soul Temple after her whereabouts were exposed. The reason why he didn't kill Bai Ling in a hurry was that Ling Xiao had set up a soul restriction in her soul sea. Ling Xiao had left a backup plan in Bai Ling's soul sea just in case. Once the master of the Blood Soul Temple searched her soul by force, the girl would die on the spot. The master of the Blood Soul Temple's cultivation seemed to be in the soul Dao, so he was interested in Ling Xiao's cultivation method. "Brother, At this time, Bai Ling's aura was extremely weak, and her robe was full of bloodstains. Even her elixir sea had been forcibly broken, and she had lost all her cultivation. Obviously, in order to find out who was behind her, the master of the Blood Soul Temple must have given her the cruelest punishment. But she still didn't reveal any trace of Ling Zhao's whereabouts. Otherwise, with the power of the Blood Soul Temple, they would have found her long ago. Yes, she was loyal, which was in line with the basic qualities of a killer's sacrifice. "Who are you?" "I don't know you." The joy on Bai Ling's pretty face disappeared in a flash, and then she looked coldly at Ling Xiao and lowered her head again. Looking at that pale and weak little face, Ling Zhao's eyes trembled slightly, and the corners of his mouth suddenly curled up into a smile. "Don't worry, I'll take you home now." At this time, how could he not know Bai Ling's intention? Did this silly girl naively think that as long as she pretended not to know Ling Xiao, the master of the Blood Soul Temple would let him live? At the end of the day, although Bai Ling had been tempered by mountains of corpses and seas of blood, her temperament was still too naive. The reason why Ling Xiao hadn't acted hastily just now was because he had some misgivings in his heart. After all, the Blood Shadow Dao law that Bai Ling had comprehended was the most suitable commander for the Dark Guards. Be it Ghostly Shadow or Stacked Shadow, they both lack some luck. Even if their strength was horrifying now, their future limits were already set. However, Bai Ling was different. The more hardships she faced, the stronger she would become. Of course, if it weren't for the fact that her luck had increased to 3,000, perhaps Ling Xiao would have already killed the Blood Soul Temple Master. It didn't matter if he lost his cultivation. However, once one's karmic luck dissipated, one's fate would also be ruined. "Young man, let's make a deal. You give me that soul skill, and I'll return your sister to you. What do you think?" The Blood Soul Temple Master smiled faintly. The blood sea in his eyes surged, and an extremely evil fluctuation gushed out as he opened and closed his eyes. At this moment, the reason why he wasn't in a hurry to capture Ling Xiao was not that he was afraid of a young man, but that he was worried that the latter's soul sea would also have a trap. Even if he captured him, he wouldn't be able to get what he wanted. "Brother, hurry up and leave." Cough, cough. "He won't let me go." Bai Ling's small face was pale, and she looked extremely anxious. A few months ago, she had wanted to take advantage of the Blood Soul Temple Master's cultivation to control him with the Soul Seal. However, before she could do anything, the Blood Soul Temple Master had discovered her and destroyed her cultivation, torturing her in every possible way. Based on Bai Ling's understanding of her master, she would never let her go. Therefore, even if Ling Xiao handed over the soul skill, he would not be able to escape death. "Ghostly Shadow." Ling Xiao smiled faintly, but the Blood Soul Temple Master's eyes flashed a trace of vigilance. However, before he had the time to react, he saw a blood-red light suddenly shoot out from the neck of the scarlet-robed young man who had captured Bai Ling. As for his head, it was sliced off by someone and fell to the ground. The Blood Soul Temple Master was taken aback. The next moment, he felt a chill rising from the soles of his feet. He took a step forward and was about to rush into the distance. An expert who could kill a disciple of his blood hall in front of him without making a sound was definitely not weaker than him. What's more, he was an expert in the Spirit Tao. He was confident that no one in the Shengzhou, except for the Divine Master, could escape from his spirit perception. But just now, he didn't even feel the slightest spatial fluctuation, and the black-robed figure had already cut off his disciple's head. How is this possible? When did such a terrifying expert appear in the Shengzhou? No wonder this young man had a calm and indifferent appearance from the beginning to the end. It turned out that there was a supreme expert standing behind him. "Great Elder, why are you in such a hurry? Where do you want to go?" However, just as the Blood Soul Temple Master appeared in the void above, a ray of light bloomed from the horizon and turned into the divine realm, completely stopping him in his tracks. Endless lines of the way were connected, and a cold wind suddenly blew all over the Qingtsong Mountain. The way was at its peak. Sect Master Tai Xian came from the distance and looked at the Blood Soul Temple Master in front of him with a smile. "Sect Master Tai Xian, The Blood Soul Temple Master looked serious, and his eyebrows were full of gloominess. I didn't expect the famous Blood Soul Temple Master to be the great elder of the sacred sect. This is really unexpected. Sect Master Taishian shook his head and chuckled. Together with Ghost Shadow, they trapped the Blood Soul Temple Master in the void. Sect Master Taishian, do you know what you are doing? This is the central border, not the eastern border. As long as I give the order, the sacred sect will use the power of the sect to destroy your Taishian Dao sect. The Blood Soul Temple Master's eyes were cold, and endless blood began to flow in them. Then, in his hand, a blood-colored banner appeared out of nowhere, and it burst out a dazzling and evil blood-red light. There were thousands of souls on the blood banner, and they turned into 3,000 bloody lights that covered the sky and the earth. Vaguely, there was a kind of evil power that could destroy the universe and destroy all living things. You overestimate yourself, Sect Master Taishian said indifferently and put out a seal with one hand. The surging wave instantly pierced through the void, causing the surroundings to tremble and the world to roar. A clear seal that was hundreds of feet long fell from the sky, surrounded by endless divine light and Tao patterns, and it suppressed the Blood Soul Temple Master. The world was dark, and the sun and moon were dim. Layers of killing intent surged out, locking down the void within 100 miles. At the same time, Ghost Shadow suddenly disappeared from where he was. The ferocious look on the Blood Soul Temple Master's face almost instantly froze. Then, he looked down at the place below him in disbelief, only to see a ray of black light suddenly appear. He saw a pitch-black dagger slash through the sea, carrying an ancient and mystical demonic might. It instantly broke through his 10,000 souls blood banner and disappeared in a flash. Boom! The clear seal smashed down, and the sky shattered. However, the Blood Soul Temple Master's face didn't change much, and there was only intense shock and fear left. At this time, he could feel that his physical body was cracking from the middle, and even his divine soul seemed to be imprisoned by some demonic will. Ling Zhao's eyes narrowed as he looked at the ghost figure that had reappeared with some surprise. A trace of coldness inexplicably emerged from the bottom of his heart. Although he had long known that this ghost general was terrifying. He had killed 8 god emperors with a wave of his hand, and he was able to pull out all the spies of the saint under Dubi Yuming's nose. But at this time, he was still shocked by the murderous aura that had merged with the void. This demon general was a real assassin hiding in the dark. His attacks weren't flashy, and there wasn't any brilliant spiritual power. But once the prey was targeted by him, it would be difficult for them to escape death. Chapter 887. Poof! The ultimate killing method was often simple and unadorned. Ghost Shadow didn't put away the dagger until the body of the master of the Blood Soul Temple split open from the middle, and his blood and internal organs scattered all over the ground. He turned to look at Ling Xiao. There was a sudden surge of soul power between heaven and earth. Ling Zhao's figure suddenly rose into the air and swallowed the soul fragments of the master of the Blood Soul Temple into the sea. His eyes flashed with a hint of playfulness. Now that he was shackled by the heavenly way, his spirit realm couldn't take another step forward. But as long as he walked out of this territory, his soul palace would definitely be thousands of feet tall and reach a new level. Gulp! In front of the hall, Bai Ling's little face was dull. She looked at the corpse of the Blood Soul Temple in disbelief. She never dreamed that her master, who was like a god in her eyes and controlled the life and death of people, would be so easily split open. Suddenly, a chill rose from the bottom of Bai Ling's heart. Especially the 2 experts who attacked. They were standing respectfully behind Ling Xiao. Such a scene made Bai Ling's eyes gradually fill with tears. If it were in the past, she would have been confident to follow her brother and conquer the world with him. But now, her elixir sea was shattered and her cultivation was lost. She was no longer useful to Ling Xiao. Moreover, her brother had become the firmament that she couldn't even look up to. He wouldn't love her anymore, would he? Ling Ling Xiao descended from the sky and put the body of the master of the Blood Soul Temple into the ancient glazed pagoda. Then, he looked at the thin and lonely figure in front of the hall. Although he had guessed the identity of the master of the Blood Soul Temple, he didn't expect that the master of the Blood Soul Temple was actually the master of the most evil force in the Xingzhou. Of course, both the master of the Taishan sect and Ghost Shadow were experts from ancient times. Their temperament and spirit were incomparable to the divine emperors of the Xingzhou. Although the master of the Blood Soul Temple was also a ninth-grade divine emperor, his methods and cultivation methods were restrained by the two. Now that two of the ninth-grade divine emperors of the Blood Soul Temple were dead and the rest were rotten fish and shrimps. In any cultivation world, there could be more than one villain. It was obvious that the group of people from the sacred sect, led by the divine master Zhou Yindao, was no longer the foliaceae powerhouses that the immortals had sent here to suppress the demonic bones. To a large extent, the divine master Zhou Yindao was the greatest villain in this world. This could be seen from the fact that many of the children of destiny that Ling Xiao met had great enmity with the saint. But who made the rule that villains couldn't kill villains? Zhou Yindao was currently guarding the greatest blessing of the Shengzhou continent, and the dragon spirit was very likely the opportunity that Ling people had schemed for him to be reborn in this world. Moreover, this divine lord had fused with the remains of the sky demon. What was he thinking? Of course, I didn't kill him for the sake of fortune. I killed him for the sake of all living beings in the world. Brother, Bai Ling's delicate body trembled slightly as she bit her red lips. However, compared to her lively and mischievous self in the past, she had long lost her childlike innocence. In particular, Ling Zhao's current status made her feel a deep sense of inferiority. When they first met, he was a good brother that Brother Lin she had entrusted to her before his death. Even though he was the young master of the ancient clan, this identity had never made Bai Ling feel the slightest bit of pressure. At that time, Bai Ling thought that both of them were extremely talented and that they would definitely be able to advance together on the path to immortality. But now, in just 3 short years, Brother Ling Xiao was already able to make a ninth-grade divine emperor bow down to him. Not only did she fail to complete her brother's task, but she also exposed her whereabouts and had her cultivation crippled. The difference between heaven and earth was like heaven and earth. How could a spirit stone dare to shine as brightly as the moon? In the end, they were people from 2 different worlds. Ling you've suffered. Ling Xiao sighed softly and reached out to pull Bai Ling into his arms. The girl was stunned, and her body immediately tensed up. She was extremely nervous. Stay by my side in the future. I'll take care of you. Ling Zhao's face was expressionless. Bai Ling's talent was obvious to the naked eye. Moreover, as a destined person, shouldn't the more miserable she was, the more impressive she would be? Now, he only needed to show her some care, and she would definitely become the most competent commander of the secret guards in the future. Brother. In an instant, Bai Ling's eyes welled up with tears. However, at this moment, she held back her tears and shook her head slightly. Brother, I suddenly want to return to the eastern border, to the small town where the Lin family used to be. Brother, I want to accompany you this time. If you miss Ling, come and see me, okay? Ling, what are you saying? Ling Xiao frowned slightly and held Bai Ling's shoulders with both hands. He looked a little angry. Brother, Ling, is now a cripple. I can't accompany you anymore. I won't allow myself to be a burden to you. Bai Ling finally couldn't suppress the sadness in her heart. Her tears fell silently. Ling, I said before that I would take care of you for the rest of your life. Ling Xiao shook his head. His eyes were clear and contained an unquestionable dignity. Brother, you will reach the peak of the world sooner or later. Ling will watch over you in the eastern border and pray for you. However, brother, I beg you, don't put me in a difficult position. Let go. Bai Ling took a deep breath. Suddenly, a smile bloomed on her face. Then, she gently pushed Ling Zhao's hand away. Tears gushed out and dripped down her face the moment she turned around. Are you worried about your cultivation? Just then, Ling Zhao's hand reached out again and held by Ling's hand. I once heard that the Saint's Divine Master has a fortune that can rebuild the Elixir Sea. Don't worry, I will help you get it. Brother, are you serious? Bai Ling gently covered her red lips with her jade-like hand as her large eyes filled with excitement. Who would be willing to wander around if they could be together forever? However, on second thought, Bai Ling's face darkened again. The Saint's Divine Master? No matter how powerful her brother was, how could he snatch a treasure from the Divine Master? As the only venerable in the Shengzhou, the Divine Master was the will of the world. Brother, forget it. How could the Divine Master? If he doesn't give it to me, I will kill him. Even if I fall into the demonic path, I won't allow you to leave my side. Ling Xiao said indifferently. He held Bai Ling's hand and walked down the mountain. At this moment, the girl's face was completely lifeless. She stared blankly at the slender figure in front of her. Her lips trembled, but she couldn't say a word. Brother is going to kill a god for me? Beep. The destined girl is extremely moved. She swears to repay the favor with her life. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 1,000 luck points and 10,000 villain points. Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows and asked in a deep voice, System, what kind of elixir ocean can I exchange for? Beep. Due to the destined girl's experience, the system recommends exchanging for the Heavenly Wheel Elixir Ocean. This elixir ocean can develop a reincarnation cycle. Heavenly Wheel Elixir Ocean. The Divine Master had the item to reconstruct the elixir ocean. It was purely a trick Ling Xiao used to trick the destined girl. When he tamed Ling Tian, the system had rewarded him with a 9-layered elixir ocean. Therefore, Ling Xiao guessed that the system would give different rewards according to the destined girl's experience. Of course, even if the system didn't have an elixir ocean, Ling Xiao could just dig out the Divine Master's elixir and give it to her. But Heavenly Wheel Elixir Ocean? It can develop a reincarnation cycle? Could it be that Bai Ling still had an opportunity that hadn't been unlocked? Thinking about it, it made sense. The more miserable a destined girl was, the stronger she would be. It seemed that the destined girl's immortal path had just begun. At the same time, at the west of Zhongjiang, below a majestic ancient mountain, the 5 people of the Ling Xiao Taoist physique descended from the sky and looked at the immortal mountain that was full of spiritual charm in front of them with a faint smile on their faces. This mountain was called Guanyin Mountain. It was the location of the largest immortal sect in Zhongjiang, the Guanyin Ancient Sect. Everyone, please wait. In front of the mountain gate, 2 young disciples with delicate features bowed slightly. Are you all here to visit the Guanyin Ancient Sect? Yes. May I know if the Guanyin Ancient Sect Master is here? Ling Zhao's expression was calm. There was a natural aura around him, which made the 2 young disciples look at him with respect. Young Master, unfortunately, the sect master and a group of elders have left the sect for half a month. They were ordered to kill the Su family's traitor. Unfortunately? Haha, what a coincidence. Chapter 888. What? Before the 2 Guanyin Immortal Sect disciples could react, Xiao Tao had already taken a step forward. He stretched out his hands and snapped their necks. Master, please. Then he casually threw the 2 corpses to the side, bowed slightly, and led Ling Xiao to the peak. The Su family's wealth was comparable to thousands of clans. Even Ling Xiao could not resist this temptation, let alone ordinary celestial sects and ancient clans. Therefore, according to Ling Xiao's thoughts, these sects and forces were no longer guarded by experts. The central region was prosperous. Who would have thought that the Sky Demon, who was known as the Forbidden Physique, would swagger around and destroy sects and clans? Experts who went to the Su family. When you come back and see that your sect is gone, won't you be pleasantly surprised? Sizzle, oh, you probably won't be able to come back either. The Su family was originally a prosperous and large clan in the central region. Although there were not many top experts in this clan, the wealth they controlled was enough to make evil spirits grind their millstones. At this moment, on the sacred land where the Sioux family was located, countless experts were holding divine treasures and continuously bombarding the ancient array below them. Dazzling brilliance flashed across the sky, and boundless spiritual power spread out. After 3 months of hard work by dozens of experts from the 3 sects and 2 clans, the Sioux family's 81 protective arrays were left with only one. At this moment, the ancient array was overflowing with golden light and flickering array patterns. It was in accordance with the heavenly Tao and was filled with an indestructible feeling. Even so, under the continuous bombardment of dozens of god emperors, layers of ripples appeared on the golden array, and there were faint signs of it collapsing. Sigh. In the main hall of the Sioux family, Su Wenye sat on the main seat. His expression was rather haggard, and even his hair was white. It was obvious that the current predicament of the Sioux family had exhausted this wealthy man of the Shenzhou continent. Patriarch, there's only one last array left. At this moment, there were only 5 figures sitting in the main hall of the Sioux family. Their strongest cultivation was only at the 6th stage of the Emperor realm. Compared to the bustling market in the past, it was extremely miserable. Sigh. Su Wenye let out a deep sigh, his face bitter. He really didn't expect that his meticulous plan would be leaked. Even those guest elders who had followed the Sioux family in the past and received the Sioux family's favor actually fled the moment the disaster struck. If it weren't for the 81 clan protecting grand arrays, the Sioux clan would have been wiped out long ago. Even so, the destruction of the Sioux family was only a matter of time. Hundreds of years of foundation, was it really going to be completely destroyed in his own hands? Patriarch, I have a plan that can give the Sioux family a chance to survive. An elder of the Sioux family suddenly said in a deep voice. What plan? Su Wenye's eyes flickered with anticipation, but the Sioux family elder had a bitter smile on his face. The holy sect only said that the one who carries the patriarch's head can obtain the Sioux family's wealth and status. They didn't say that the Sioux family members can't. Hearing this, a wisp of surprise flashed across the faces of the Sioux clan's elders, and then they all clapped. That's right. As long as we obtain the head of the family head and offer it to the saint, the Sioux family might still have a chance of survival. You? All of you, Su Wenye's expression froze. His mouth opened slightly, but he didn't say anything for a long time. In the current situation, the Sioux family was doomed. Although the words of the Sioux family's elders were cruel, they weren't without reason. Once the last array was broken, his head would be more precious than a spiritual treasure. Patriarch, if you don't make a decision, you will be in trouble. For the Sioux family's foundation. No. Just as Su Wenye closed his eyes in despair and was about to commit suicide, a cold voice suddenly came from outside the main hall. They saw Su Yan, who was dressed in red, walking in with a cold expression. She glanced at the elders with a sinister gaze. I'm afraid you don't know how the saint works. The divine master has always been ruthless. He would rather kill the wrong person than let the wrong person go. Now that the Sioux family has rebelled once, how can he still trust the Sioux family? Su Wenye sighed deeply. He didn't expect that the last person in the Sioux family who still had a backbone would be this weak daughter of his. That's right. With the saint's ruthlessness, it was impossible for them to give the Sioux family a chance to rise again. Therefore, even if he was willing to sacrifice his life, the Sioux family's ending would be the same. His actions just now were just to exchange for a chance of survival for his daughter. Otherwise, without the need for others to do anything, this group of pampered Sioux family members would probably kill the father and daughter pair. First, miss, what do you think we should do? The Sioux family's elders snorted. They didn't expect the saint to let the Sioux family live. They just wanted Su Yan to bring Su Wenye's head to the saint to temporarily stabilize the group of experts from the 3 sects and 2 clans outside. This way, they would have a good chance to escape from Zhongjiang. Open the treasury. The experts from the 3 sects and 2 clans will definitely focus on snatching the treasures, and we will take this opportunity to escape from Zhongjiang. Su Yan's eyes were cold, and her heart was filled with despair. She knew that even if the Su family was willing to give up all their spiritual treasures, Su Wenye would definitely die. But now, there was no way out. Inexplicably, a handsome face suddenly appeared in Su Yan's mind. If the young master is here, what choice would he make? The elders looked at each other, but in the end, they didn't say anything. Boom! At this moment, dozens of spirit rainbows suddenly fell from the sky above the Su family and fiercely smashed on the ancient array. Suddenly, the void shattered and heaven and earth collapsed. Several cracks immediately spread on the golden array. Family head. Not good. The array is about to break. Forget it. Let's do as Yin said and open the Su family's treasury. Then, everyone will go their separate ways. Su Wenye stood up and looked at the girl in front of him. Yin'er, it's all my fault. If I knew this would happen, I would have let you go find Lord Ling Xiao. Father, Lord Ling Xiao and I have nothing to do with each other. Father, please be careful with your words. Su Yan's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly, but there was a trace of sadness in her heart. The Su family was now at the end of the road. They were no longer the wealthiest family in Shengzhou. Once a relationship with Ling Xiao was known by the saint, it would inevitably bring disaster to the young master. Ling Xiao was very strong, but in front of the saint, he was still pitifully small. Once they parted, there would be nothing between them. Young master, it was Yin-er's fortune to meet you in this life. But in the end, Yin-er didn't keep her promise and couldn't accompany you to enjoy this eternal youth. Sai, keep this divine talisman well. Once the array is broken, use this talisman to escape from here. Yin-er, you must live on. Su Wenye sighed again and again. He handed a golden talisman to Su Yin and walked out of the hall. Crack! Above the void, the sound of shattering could be heard. In just a short breath, the ancient golden array shattered and turned into 3,000 streams of light that disappeared without a trace. The experts of the 3 sects and 2 clans finally descended from the sky with smiles on their faces and surrounded the entire Su family's hall. Yin-er, leave quickly. I'll lure them away. Pucci. Just as Su Wenye's body blossomed with spirit radiance, and he was about to flee into the distance, a Su family elder beside him suddenly attacked and blasted him out of the hall. Then, the elder quickly fled in the opposite direction. Su Wenye is here. Everyone quickly kill him. Chapter 889. Father. Su Yan's eyes flashed with sorrow when she saw Su Wenye being smashed down by the Su family's elder. However, she didn't resent anyone now that things had come to this. In the end, the Su family's calamity was caused by her father alone. If he was content and enjoyed the wealth of the world, he wouldn't have forced the Su family to such a state. How many people in this world could truly achieve the word sufficient? In the end, the higher one stood, the greater one's desire would be. Ha! Su Wenye, it's time for you to die. The experts from the immortal sects and ancient clans were shocked and immediately pounced on Su Wenye. But, at this moment, a terrifying, scorching aura quietly rippled in the sky. Then, a beautiful figure in red descended from the sky and stood in front of Su Wenye. Su Yan's body was covered in flames, and even her hair was sparkling like flames. She looked like a fire goddess and emitted a shocking aura. If you want to kill my father, you'll have to kill me first. The girl's voice was cold and her face was as beautiful as a painting. Wherever her gaze landed, even space would be burned into nothingness. The heaven and earth spirit fire was the top divine item in this world, and its power was enough to intimidate god emperors. Although Su Yan's cultivation was only at the divine overlord realm, the scorching aura made many experts from the ancient sects change their expressions. This aura is the heaven and earth spirit fire. The eldest daughter of the Su family has a heaven and earth spirit fire in her body. Instantly, the greed in the eyes of many experts from the ancient sects intensified. Compared to the wealth of the Su family, this heaven and earth spirit fire seemed to be more attractive. Niece Su, the holy sect has ordered to kill your father. If you know what's good for you, You should obediently step aside. Perhaps I can spare your life on account of our past relationship." In the crowd, an elder with white hair and beard snorted coldly. His white robe emitted a clear radiance, and he seemed to have transcended the mortal world. This person was the sect master of the Cloudwatch sect, Guanju. He was also the one with the highest cultivation among the god emperors. "Don't even think about it." Su Yin pursed her red lips. Facing dozens of god emperors alone, her figure looked lonely and tragic. However, just as she was about to step forward and walk towards the god emperors, Su Winya suddenly reached out his hand and pressed her shoulder. "Yener, Lord Guan, are you serious?" Su Wenya's expression was calm, without a trace of panic. Now, he had already given up on life and death. His only concern was Su Yin. "I've always been a man of my word," Guanju said indifferently. His emperor's aura rippled, and there seemed to be clouds floating around him. It was indescribably mysterious. "Father." Su Yan's beautiful eyes trembled, and even her voice trembled. "Yena." Live on for the Su family. Boom! Suddenly, there was the sound of thunder between heaven and earth, and a torrential rain poured down. However, to a cultivator, it was difficult for the rain to wet their clothes. Su Yan's body had lost its spiritual glow, and he stood in the rain in a daze, allowing the rain to wet his hair and clothes. It was a poignant sight. Everyone, the first elder of the sacred sect, only said that he would take Su Wenya's life, but he didn't say that he would exterminate the Su family. "I will bring Su Yin back to the Guanyin sect. Does anyone have any objections?" Guanju said calmly as he scanned the group of emperor gods around him. Su Yan's talent was too heaven-defying. However, he didn't dare to go against the sacred sect's will and protect this woman. He only promised to protect her life today, but he didn't promise to protect her forever. As a divine overlord, he naturally had countless ways to make her open her mouth and spit out the secret of the spiritual fire. Since Sect Master Guan has such intentions, we naturally have nothing to say. However, since Sect Master wants Su Yin, why don't you leave Su Winya to us?" The remaining two sect masters sneered with gloomy expressions. "All right." Guanju frowned, but he didn't say anything in the end. "Yena, you must remember, no matter what happens, live on." "Father." "No, Pucci." Just as Su Yan's face was filled with sorrow and hesitation, Su Winya suddenly waved his hand and smashed the top of his head. His head was instantly smashed into pieces. Blood mixed with the rain and sprinkled down, dyeing the entire Su family's main hall red. "Father." Su Yan's legs trembled, and he knelt on the ground. His eyes were filled with despair. The experts looked at each other. The sacred sect's first elder had ordered that whoever had Su Wenya's head would get the Su family's treasures. But now, Su Winya had smashed his head into pieces? How could a cooked duck fly away? Sect Master Guan. The Guanyin sect will give up the Su family's treasury. Guanju coldly looked at the crowd. Beside him, the experts of the Guanyin sect started to glow with spiritual light. It was obvious that they were ready to attack. All right. In the end, the experts of the two sects and two clans didn't say anything else. They lifted their feet and flew towards the depths of the Su family's residence. Niece Su, let's go back to the Guanyin sect first. We'll have a good talk about your future." Guanju lowered his head and looked at the girl at his feet. He no longer concealed the greed in his eyes. The spiritual fire of heaven and earth might be the opportunity for him to enter the 9th grade. Compared to the spiritual treasures and immortal materials, Su Yin was the greatest fortune of the Su family. "Father." Su Yin knelt on the ground, and his eyes gradually filled with determination. "Niece Su, the dead can't come back to life. If you're obedient, I'll plead with the great elder to give your father a chance to rest in peace. Otherwise," Guanju turned his head and gave the two god thearchs of the Guanyin sect a look. Seeing this, the two god thearchs immediately stepped forward and supported Su Yin on both sides. They turned and walked into the distance. When they arrived at the foot of Mount Guanyin, they suddenly saw a black-clothed figure slowly walking towards them from the rain in the distance. He held an oilcloth bamboo umbrella in his hand, looking elegant and otherworldly, like an immortal in a painting. The mountains and rivers were in a line, and the sea of clouds overlapped. Only that black robe was like splashed ink, wanly billowing. Su Yan's originally dull eyes suddenly had a trace of shock. Then, two lines of clear tears flowed out his eyes. Even his face was filled with grievance and resentment. From the beginning to the end, Ling Xiao had been watching this farce of the Su family from afar. He could have easily saved Su Wenye, but he didn't. The head of the Su family was of no use to him if he was alive. Moreover, once he overthrew the Saint sect, the Su family would be able to regain its former glory. Su Wenye had too many ambitions in his heart. He was born rebellious and could not be of much use. Only when he was dead would Su Yan have no worries and wholeheartedly work for him. At the same time, the Su family's hundreds of years of heritage would naturally fall into Ling Xiao's hands. He had already ordered Ziyin and sect master Taixian to set up a formation to trap the strong cultivators of the four clans in the Su family. Now, he only needed to put on a good show, and he could justifiably start massacre. Who didn't know how to kill in a fantasy world? But to kill for the greatest value, it was called art. Who are you? Guan Zhu stood in front of everyone, and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. Although the black-robed youth did not have the slightest fluctuation of spiritual power, every step he took made the 8th grade God Emperor feel an inexplicable fear. His clothes fluttered, and his temperament was outstanding. "Yinner, I'm here." Ling Xiao held a bamboo umbrella and stood about 10 feet in front of everyone. His eyes seemed to be filled with self-blame as he quietly looked at Su Yan. "Young master, why are you only here now? Why are you only here now?" At this moment, Su Yan could no longer suppress the grief in his heart, and he burst into tears. Heaven and earth mourned, and the rain covered thousands of miles. Only that black robe was unrestrained, and it did not fall in love or fade into the world. Look at this rain. It was born in the sky and died on the ground, or crashed into the umbrella and shattered into pieces. How is it different from life? Chapter 890. Sir, so it's an old friend of the Su family. Guan Zhu frowned with a gloomy face. However, he didn't dare to act rashly. Instead, he felt increasingly uneasy. How could a young man make him feel so oppressed? He didn't look like someone from Middle Border. When did such a monster appear in the Shengzhou land? Young man, the Su family betrayed the sacred sect and has been exterminated. I advise you not to meddle in other people's business, lest you get killed. The sacred sect should be destroyed. Ling Xiao spoke indifferently as he lightly waved his hand, causing the oilcloth bamboo umbrella to instantly float in the sky and block out the curtain of rain, whereas his figure had already flashed out in a flash. In his hand, the samsara demonic blade radiated a piercingly cold demonic aura. Even the arm holding the blade seemed to have grown layers of reverse scales. It was strange and terrifying, and an ancient aura was awakened. Buzz! The ear-piercing sound of the blade suddenly resounded through the world. A piercingly cold black light suddenly swept across 1,000 miles and enveloped the universe. Endless strange phenomena were formed layer by layer. The world was eternally dark, and all light was extinguished. Vaguely, it was as if a great demon had descended from the heavens. The god emperors of the immortal sects felt that time had frozen and entered a dream. When they saw the rain fall, they felt a chill on their necks, and their vitality dissipated. The young man in black had already turned around and walked away with Su Yan in his arms. He raised his hand to catch the bamboo umbrella that fell from the sky. "Xiaobo," Ling Xiao said indifferently. A figure suddenly appeared behind him. To be honest, although Tian Ming had a wretched personality, the law of time was indeed a wonderful tool for a sneak attack. Of course, it wasn't that Ling Xiao hadn't thought of snatching the law of time. However, Ling Xiao was involved in the karma of the upper world after all. He might bring some surprises to Ling Xiao in the future. He was forced to comprehend the law of time in the glazed ancient pagoda and was subdued by Ling Xiao as soon as he appeared. His creation was probably still in the Azure world. When the time came, he would trigger the opportunity and Ling Xiao would get it. Then, killing him would just be a matter of using a luck plundering talisman. Master, tell them to die without a complete corpse. Yes. Heavy rain poured down, and the green peaks were dyed green. Su Yin stared blankly at the cold and indifferent face in front of him. Tears fell from his eyes, and his lips trembled, but he couldn't utter a single word. I'm late. Ling Xiao pulled Su Yin into his embrace and whispered into her ear. Young master, what took you so long? Why did you only come now? If only you had come a day earlier. Father. Su Yin wept bitterly, but he wasn't surprised at all. In her opinion, killing 4 emperors with one strike seemed to be a matter of course. Or rather, since the first time Ling Xiao saved her life, Su Yin had a belief in him. My young master is a peerless hero. When I am in a desperate situation, he will descend from the sky and kill all my enemies. Don't worry, Uncle Su will not die in vain. I will make the saint pay the price. Ling Xiao gently patted Su Yan's shoulder. His tone was solemn. Young master, Yin no longer has a home. Yin will have no home in the future. Su Yin hugged Ling Xiao tightly. To her, there was only one family left in this world, and that was Ling Xiao. No, with me, you will have a home. Ling Xiao sighed. Let's go. I have ordered people to suppress the experts of the 2 sects and 2 clans in the main hall of the Su family. You will take revenge personally. Young master. Su Yan's eyes suddenly flashed with a touch of gloominess. Even the aura around her seemed to be bone-chilling. At this moment, her Dao heart was extremely simple. The revenge of killing her father, the kindness of her young master. Today, the misty rain fell on the Holy Land. One person held an umbrella, 2 people walked together. The boundless rain fell, and her red dress was stained with blood. When the 2 of them walked to the main hall of the Su family, the grief on Su Yan's face completely dissipated and turned into a strong sense of resentment. There were several figures standing quietly around the main hall. The spiritual power around them was vibrating, imprisoning heaven and earth. Everyone, we are the vassals of the sacred sect. Aren't you afraid of your actions being known by the sacred sect? In the main hall, the leader of an ancient sect was shocked and angry as he shouted in a deep voice. However, Ziyin, Xionghuan, sect master Tai Xian, and the others ignored him. They just stood in the air and blocked everyone's escape route. 3 ninth-grade experts. Such combat strength was enough to destroy any celestial sect or ancient clan in the Shenzhou. In fact, even now, the dozens of god emperors of the 2 sects and 2 clans did not dare to have the slightest disobedience in front of the 3 emperors. Look, someone is coming. Save me. Help. In the distance, in the rain, 2 figures suddenly walked over slowly. They held an umbrella together and were accompanied by celestial clouds. They were like otherworldly immortals. However, just as the god emperor's eyes were shining with joy and they were shouting loudly, their expressions suddenly froze. At this moment, they saw a woman in red who looked somewhat familiar. It's Su Yin, the eldest daughter of the Su family. Everyone's expression changed drastically, and their eyes trembled. In particular, the tall young man beside her, who was dressed in black and had his hair tied up, made people feel an inexplicable chill from the bottom of their hearts. His Taoist rhymes fluctuated, and he inexplicably revealed endless demonic intent. In particular, the young man's handsome face had a domineering aura that looked down on the world. At this moment, the corners of Ling Xiao's mouth seemed to curl up into a gentle smile. However, when the god emperors saw this smile, they felt a chill all over their bodies. They only felt a chill down their spines, as if they were on the verge of death. Greetings, my lord. At this moment, the 3 god emperors who were originally standing in the sky suddenly bowed in unison and shouted in a deep voice. Seeing this scene, the god emperors of the 4 sects were stunned. Their eyes widened, and they could not make a sound. Among them, A few of the weak-willed ones even staggered and fell to the ground in a panic. My lord? 3 ninth-grade god emperors actually called a young man their lord? Moreover, looking at his behavior with Su Yin, they seemed to be extremely close. Go, Yin'er. Use this saber to kill them. Ling Xiao stopped in front of the main hall and extended his hand to pass the demonic saber of samsara to Su Yin. Then, he raised his head and glanced at Ziyin and the other two. In the next moment, spiritual light shone around the 3 of them at the same time. 3 indescribably terrifying auras fell from the sky and instantly crushed the dozens of god emperors to the ground, making them unable to move. Currently, the strongest god emperors of the 4 sects of the Su family were only 7th-grade god emperors, and there were only 2 of them. The remaining elders of the ancient sects were mostly 4th-grade or 5th-grade god emperors. Regardless of whether it was sect master Taixin or Xionghuan, their cultivation had long surpassed that of god emperors. Their auras were not something that ordinary 9th-grade god emperors could compare to. Even Zi Yin had the bloodline of the Thunder Dragon. Her aura was ferocious and made people shudder. When the 3 of them joined forces, their aura alone was enough to easily kill god emperors. Su Yin silently took the demonic saber and walked toward the main hall. From the beginning to the end, she had never doubted Ling Xiao at all. Or rather, with her cultivation level, she could not break Ling Xiao's holy words. The young master said that he was late, so he must have been late. Ling Xiao folded the bamboo umbrella and followed closely behind her. Although his divine soul had reached the peak of the Shengzhou state, and it was difficult for him to advance any further, his divine soul had replenished his divine soul. As long as he walked out of this region, his divine soul would definitely rise rapidly. No, no, the divine master will not let you go. Help! I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. Spare my life. Instantly, the main hall of the Su family was filled with cries, and the atmosphere was lively. However, Su Yin did not say a word. She walked into the main hall and gently raised her hand. Then, she stabbed the demonic saber of samsara into the god emperor's hearts again and again. Poof! In a short while, the bodies of the god emperors withered rapidly as if they were devoured by demons. Even their divine souls were refined into nothingness the moment Ling Xiao's gaze fell on them. This was purgatory in the human world. Evil demon, evil demon. The heavy rain poured down, and the human world lost many souls. Ling Xiao, who was dressed in black, looked at the sky with his hands behind his back. His eyes were deep and determined. May I ask the deities in the heavens, am I wrong to save the world and kill people? Chapter 891. Father, your daughter has avenged you. The main hall of the Su family was filled with bones, but there wasn't a trace of blood. Su Yin knelt on the ground with scarlet eyes, but she couldn't shed a single tear. At this moment, she seemed to have exhausted all her strength. Her breath was weak, and she looked exhausted. Ling Xiao walked to her side and sighed softly. Yin'er, if you're tired, go back and rest. I'll help you destroy the Saint sect. No, I want to see the destruction of the Saint sect with my own eyes. Su Yin clenched her teeth and turned to Ling Xiao. She returned the reincarnation demon blade with both hands. Young master, Yin, it will never forget your kindness. Why did the 2 of us have to do this? Ling Xiao shook his head and pulled Su Yin up from the ground. In the end, these people are just greedy and want to seize the Su family's wealth. It's a pity that Uncle Su is so stupid. Yin'er, don't worry. After I destroy the Saint sect, I'll return the Su family's past glory. No. Su Yin shook her head slightly, and her eyes were sad. Young master, Yin'er only wants to follow young master for the rest of my life. The Su family is no more. After this disaster, Su Yin had already seen through the absurdity of this world. The so-called status and wealth were just fleeting clouds. Only true feelings couldn't be let down. Yin'er, young master, our Su family has countless treasures. Now that the Su family has been destroyed, these things will be handed over to young master. This, I'm not, young master. Why do you need to explain between you and me? Su Yin snuggled in Ling Zhao's arms, and her voice gradually softened. Young master, Yin is tired. All right, poverty shall lead people to gather all the treasures of the Su family. We can't let those hypocrites in central border benefit. Ling Xiao sighed softly, and his expression seemed to be resolute. Poverty Xiao immediately straightened his back and patted his chest. Master, don't worry. I promise that after today, the Su family won't have anything that can be sold for spirit stones. Hearing this, Ling Xiao nodded and walked out of the hall with Su Yin. At this time, the rain had just stopped, and the world was clear. The fragrance of the earth concealed the smell of blood. Multicolored light pierced through the remnant clouds and poured down, illuminating a distant mountain with a majestic golden light. This mountain was located at the center of the 5 regions of the Shenzhou continent. It was also where the sacred sect was located and was known as the Divine Mountain. Young master, actually, Yin is already very happy that you are able to help me kill these people from the ancient sections. Let's leave the central border. Although at this time, Su Yin couldn't figure out why Ling Xiao was so brazenly slaughtering strong people in central border, the Holy Church didn't have the slightest reaction. However, as long as the Divine Master was still alive, this world would still be under the control of the Saint sect. The current Ling Xiao seemed to have reached a height that was beyond her reach. Even the 3 experts with terrifying auras were willing to recognize him as their master. However, when Su Yin thought of the Divine Lord's power, he felt powerless. Young master must have experienced many dangers during this period of time. On the path to immortality, there was no fortune that came out of nowhere. Inexplicably, Su Yin felt a little heartache. She hugged Ling Zhao's arm tightly. Suddenly, she didn't want anything else. She just wanted to cross the mountains and seize with him and watch the sun set and the stars fall. The Holy Church has gone too far. If I don't kill the Divine Master, what's the use of my cultivation? Ling Xiao shook his head indifferently, his eyes resolute. When these words fell into Su Yan's ears, they sounded chivalrous and tender. Young master, Yin, you don't have to say anything. I have made up my mind. Ling Xiao didn't give Su Yin a chance to speak again. He lifted his foot and walked towards the Divine Mountain. Behind him, Ziyin, sect master Taixian, and Xionghuan hid in the void and disappeared without a trace. The entire central border suddenly fell into a strange silence. At this time, many experts from small sects and clans noticed that the immortal sect of the ancient sects, which was usually bustling like a market, seemed to be exceptionally quiet today. The sky should be clear after the rain, and there should be no clouds for thousands of miles. However, there were dark clouds gathering in the sky, suppressing people's hearts. Stop. Where the Holy Church is, mortals are not allowed to enter. When Ling Xiao and Su Yin walked side by side to the foot of the Divine Mountain, 2 handsome young men suddenly descended from the sky and stopped them. Poof! But this time, Ling Xiao didn't say anything else. He slashed out with the demonic blade in his hand and instantly cut off their heads. Seeing this scene, Su Yan's eyes trembled slightly, but he didn't dare to say anything. He followed Ling Xiao and walked slowly towards the peak of the mountain. On the Divine Mountain, there were thousands of rays of light and beautiful immortal spirits. An extremely rich spiritual aura surged and evolved into thousands of strange phenomena. Bright fog lingered and golden runes flashed in the sky. Deep in the clouds, there seemed to be divine radiance. An incomparably magnificent golden palace stood at the end of the mountain in the distance. It pierced the clouds and was magnificent and tall. However, compared to ordinary immortal sects, the Holy Church almost didn't have any defenses. Even the 2 sword-bearing disciples at the foot of the mountain were only divine generals and were mostly used for summoning. Of course, with the Holy Church's prestige, no one would dare to come here even if there was no one on the mountain. The will of an expert was the order of the heavenly way. People admired immortals not only because of their longevity, but also because they were free and easy in the 9 heavens. The There are two people on the mountain path. On the divine mountain, a few elders of the Holy Church frowned slightly. They seemed to have felt the movement at the foot of the mountain. They walked out of the hall and looked into the distance. They saw two figures walking side by side in the green and colorful area. They were neither fast nor slow as they walked along the mountain. Gusts of wind blew past, causing their robes to flutter. Their hair fluttered in the wind, making them look like an immortal couple. Why didn't you hear the report from the foot of the mountain? At the head of the group, a white-haired, golden-robed elder with a dignified face shouted. Behind him, an elder immediately bowed down and said, "Second elder, I will go down the mountain to find out what happened." "There's no need." The second elder of the Holy Church was called by Sean. He was an 8th grade great god expert. The 4 great divine messengers had yet to return, and the great elder's whereabouts were unknown. The Holy Son had returned to the mountain and didn't care about the Holy Church's affairs. However, an 8th grade great god would be a threat if it was a year ago. But now, there was no need for Ziyin and the others to do anything. Ling Xiao could kill him with a wave of his sword. "You're finally here?" On a mountain far away, a white-robed figure stood on the mountain peak and looked down at the clouds below. She was like a lone celestial being that had descended from the heavens, otherworldly and ethereal, yet she carried an indescribable sense of loneliness. Meng Yuan frowned and stared at the black-robed figure. No one knew what she was thinking. In the next moment, her jade-like feet stepped out and her body transformed into a graceful swan. She stepped out from the void and walked towards Ling Xiao. It's the Holy Son?" Looking at the figure floating down, the elders of the Holy Church immediately bowed down. "Holy Son, someone has trespassed on the divine mountain of the Holy Church. He's an old friend." Meng Yuan looked calm, but only she knew what kind of waves were surging in her heart. It had been a few months since they parted, but she still often thought about his face. Damn it, he's a demon. Chapter 892. Old Friend. The group of elders was stunned for a moment before realization dawned on them. The saint was a genius. Now that he had returned from his journey, what was there to be surprised about knowing a few friends from the path of immortality? Moreover, the young man in the mountain had a celestial aura. Every step he took, there were layers of great Tao lotuses blooming. He was obviously a peerless person. But why was the saint not happy at this moment? Instead, he looked worried. Should this be the expression of an old friend when they meet? When Ling Xiao and Meng Yuan reached the peak of the mountain and appeared in front of the group of elders, a gentle smile bloomed on his face. "Saintess Meng Yuan, how have you been?" "Saintess?" The elders were dumbfounded. They looked at Meng Yuan and then at Ling Xiao. Even Su Yin had a look of surprise on her face. Meng Yuan was wearing a white shirt and had no makeup on. She was obviously dressed like a man. "Lord Ling Xiao," Meng Yuan sighed in her heart and tried to suppress her emotions. "How have you been?" "Ling Xiao, do you know who my broken Taoist heart looks like? Are all the elders of the sacred sect here?" Ling Xiao glanced at the group of experts from the saint's sect and nodded gently. Even though he had killed a few emperor gods of the sacred sect, there were still 2 grade 8 and 4 grade 7 emperor gods on the sacred mountain. Not to mention that Dugi Yunjin, Yuan Ju, and the great elder of the sacred sect were grade 9 emperors. With such a foundation, even without the master god, the honorable realm expert, they could dominate the 5 territories and control the world. That's right. The great elder is out and has not returned. The remaining elders of the sacred sect are all here. Meng Yuan nodded. Since the master god was a demon, in her eyes, these elders were also demon servants. If she did not kill them, it would be difficult to restore her Taoist heart. "The great elder is not coming back." Ling Xiao smiled faintly, but the elders of the sacred sect changed their expressions. Why did the conversation between the saint and this young master sound as if the two of them were discussing how to kill them all? F***CK? Was it an illusion? Let's go and meet the Divine Lord. Ling Xiao held Su Yan's hand and walked through the crowd with Meng Yuan towards the depths of the Divine Mountain. Behind the 3 of them, the elders of the saint's sect looked at each other. At this moment, they could only feel their scalps tingling as they felt an indescribable sense of loss. Kill them all. Ling Xiao only spoke coldly after the three figures had disappeared. Heaven and earth instantly darkened as three figures appeared in the void. Divine radiance flickered around them. One of them had a natural Tao aura, as if a Tao deity had descended into this world, revealing a divine nature. One of them was surrounded by purple lightning. Her beauty was unparalleled, and her demonic aura rose and fell like clouds, blotting out the sun. The remaining person stood towering in the sky. The light of heaven and earth within 1,000 feet of him was extinguished, and the world fell into eternal darkness. However, the auras of the three of them had already reached the peak of perfection, and they stood above the heavens and earth. Endless sounds of Tao, demonic and beastly howls resounded through the world, and the entire divine mountain fell into the night. Dark clouds gathered, and tribulation, lightning, fell from the sky. The immortal aura of the peak of the mountain was actually eroded and shattered by the layers of demonic aura. It was like a tribulation zone. Ling Xiao and Meng Yuan stopped in the depths of the divine mountain. They looked at the golden light pillar in the distance, and their expressions remained calm. At this moment, he could feel an extremely terrifying force surging above the divine pillar, as if it wanted to seal the sky. It was obvious that Zhou Yindao should be in the golden light, and Yi Qingchuan was most likely there too. Where is the place where the divine mountain is suppressing the dragon vein? Ling Xiao suddenly turned his head and looked at the girl beside him. Meng Yuan's beautiful eyes turned cold as she said coldly, "There's a forbidden area in the Saint sect. Other than the Divine Lord, no one can step into it. I'm not sure if it's the place you're looking for. Also, I'll return your Qi-amplifying divine talisman to you." Since she wanted to kill a deity, there was no need for Meng Yuan to hide anymore. As the divine talisman left her body, her fox ears and fox tail were instantly exposed. Even the demonic aura outside her body surged like a tide. It was a ghastly sight. "Oh," Ling Xiao nodded slightly. He reached out and took the divine talisman that he had given to Meng Yuan before. Then he waved his hand. The two girls saw the void in front of them suddenly turn dark. When they came back to their senses, the young man in front of them was wearing a white robe, and he looked gentle. "Meng Yuan, you don't have to go." "No, I want to go." Meng Yuan shook her head. Although she had guessed her identity, her heart was still filled with resentment. Master? Father? After all, he was the one who killed a deity, betrayed his master, and abandoned his wife. Then, he raised his daughter to be a cold-blooded person who killed her own kind. How could such a person be worthy of being called a father? All right. Ling Xiao did not say anything else. He took a step forward and strode toward the place where the golden light was shining brightly. Suddenly, there were loud noises coming from the void in the distance. Rays of divine light shot up into the sky, but they were suppressed in the blink of an eye. The blue sky collapsed, and there were endless cracks running through the firmament, reversing yin and yang. Under the suppression of the 3 9th-grade divine emperors, the shocking fluctuation quickly disappeared without a trace. At the same time, Ling Xiao and the other two finally appeared under the golden light. Now, only the Divine Master was left in the Saint sect. The so-called schemes were meaningless now. An ambitious and ruthless person like Zhou Yindao would not trust anyone easily. Moreover, Meng Yuan's cultivation was too low. Even if he launched a sneak attack, he might not be able to hurt an honorable realm expert who had merged with the demonic bone. Therefore, it was better to control her. If Zhou Yindao still had a trace of kinship in his heart, Meng Yuan might be his lifeline. He had refined her demonic aura for more than 200 years just to cover up her identity as his daughter. Although Ling Xiao did not know how Zhou Yindao had saved Meng Yuan from the brink of death, it was obvious that he had spent a lot of spiritual energy. Divine Master, should I say that you are soft-hearted or you have great love in your heart? At this moment, in the place where the golden light was covering, a tall figure was sitting quietly with his legs crossed. Spiritual light surged around him, and there was a mysterious scene above his head. Divine trees and green clouds, stars, sea, sun, and moon. He sat there as if he had merged with the universe and was one with heaven and earth, deducing the primordial chaos. Ling Xiao indeed felt an aura of transcendence from him. 5 elements, yin, yang, massacre, sword principles, lightning, divine wood, and even divine words, and so on. As long as Ling Xiao had seen Dao laws in Shenzhou, this divine master had them all. There were even several Dao laws that Ling Xiao had not devoured. In 300 years, he had slaughtered thousands of living beings and gathered dozens of Dao laws into his body. What surprised Ling Xiao even more was that this divine master's body seemed to be somewhat special. There was an aura on his arm that was of the same origin as Ling Xiao's, but in addition, his bloodline aura was also mixed with a trace of demonic will. Was it caused by the remains of the sky demon? Or was Zhou Yindao a demon? However, at this moment, there was a heavenly secret surrounding his body. Even though Ling Xiao had the sky demon's eyes and the eye of nirvana, he could not see it clearly. It was like the aura of reincarnation, but it was not. However, there was a vicissitude that transcended the physical body. Moreover, most of those with Dao laws were blessed with providence. It seemed that the reason why there were so many people with providence in this era was very likely that they were born to face a tribulation. And this tribulation was not only the sky demon, but also the divine master. I've said before, my young master will one day step onto the divine mountain and kill you. A faint laugh suddenly came from a place where the golden light was shining. Hearing this, the originally meditating golden-robed figure suddenly opened his eyes and looked toward Ling Xiao and the other two. Heaven and earth were overturned, and the universe was reversed. For a moment, Ling Xiao actually saw the other side of the netherworld sea. Now he is here. Chapter 893. So what if I'm here? The golden-robed man smiled indifferently. He didn't take Ling Xiao and the others seriously at all. He had sensed at the moment the young man stepped into the divine mountain. Even Ziyin, sect master Taixian, and Xionghuan couldn't escape his soul perception. However, in his eyes, there wasn't much difference between a 9th-grade divine emperor and a 9th-grade divine general. I'm already invincible in this world. Even if I sit here and seal you in the array, I can still suppress all creatures with a thought. Arrogant. In the depths of the golden light, there was suddenly a clear light lingering, and an extremely cold chill filled the world, freezing the void and the light. Then, a figure in green gradually appeared. Her face was as beautiful as a painting, and her figure was graceful. Her face was extremely cold. If it weren't for the different hair color, Ling Xiao would have seen the figure of the white-haired woman in the sky demon's soul consciousness at first glance. Was it because of the Taoist laws? At this moment, Yi Qingchan was still cold and aloof, but there was a different temperament on her body. 5th grade Divine Emperor, 8,000 points of fate. She stood on the altar, aloof from the world. Above her head was an ancient green token that bloomed with thousands of divine lights, blocking all the golden light. Young master. It wasn't until her gaze fell on Ling Xiao that a charming smile appeared on her pretty face. The aura that caused Ling Xiao to be surprised and bewildered instantly vanished without a trace. It was as if she had never changed. She loved Ling Xiao deeply and regarded him as her life. The only thing that changed was the way Ling Xiao looked at her. Fogros. She was a god standing proudly in the Shenzhou. With a thought, she could freeze thousands of miles and suppress the world. The light dissipated. She was the nervous girl in green from the sword sect. She served tea and water, served the sword and burned incense. Qingchan, I'm here. Ling Xiao smiled warmly. Even though he had many doubts in his heart, he still maintained a calm expression on his face. No matter what, Yi Qingchan was no longer who she used to be. That ancient soul had been completely devoured by her, and it would be difficult for there to be any changes. I knew that young master would definitely come. I have been waiting for young master. Yi Qingchan's brows were gentle, and there was a bright and beautiful smile at the corner of her mouth. However, just as she finished speaking, her delicate body suddenly trembled. A stream of blood flowed out from her mouth and dyed her green robe red. It was obvious that she had a fortuitous encounter during this period of time, and her cultivation had recovered to the level of a god-emperor. However, in front of the divine master, who was an honorable realm expert, he was still small and weak. The only thing that puzzled Ling Xiao was that with Yi Qingchan's current strength, Zhou Yandao was completely capable of killing her. However, he didn't do that. Instead, he used a formation to imprison and seal him. Could it be that it was caused by luck again? The person you're waiting for is actually a young man? Zhou Yandao shook his head and chuckled. However, when his gaze landed on Meng Yuan, it was slightly stagnant. Yuan, aren't you going to introduce your friends to me? Why? Meng Yuan looked miserable as she stared at Zhou Yan. Why? Since you came with him, you should have seen that woman already, right? Zhou Yandao shook his head and chuckled. Divine light flowed out of his golden eyes like a whirlpool. If it wasn't for me, you would have been killed by her. This monster, in the end, it's hard to change her nature. She's vicious and stupid. Even if she used to be loyal to her lover, once she's bewitched, she'll forget her true nature. Tell me, do you think this monster should be killed? What about you? Meng Yuan clenched her teeth. That's right, Baizhiro did say that her daughter had died. Since she was still alive, she was most likely saved by Zhou Yandao. However, a demon was still a demon. Take Ling Xiao, for example. Even if he had a righteous heart, his methods were still so cruel that it made one's hair stand up in anger. Me? Zhou Yandao pushed forward with one hand and suppressed the chill around Yi Qingchan's body. Suddenly, a black light shot out from his other hand and covered the sky. Vaguely, there seemed to be a blurry figure floating above his head. Seeing this scene, Ling Xiao frowned slightly. He suddenly had an illusion in his heart. Although this demonic shadow was illusory and ethereal, its aura was somewhat similar to his sky demon body. Moreover, this divine master's Taoist laws were most likely stolen. In this case, did it mean that as long as one fused with a demonic bone, even if one was not the reincarnation of the sky demon, one could still obtain the inheritance of the sky demon? Very suddenly, a chill seemed to spread in Ling Xiao's heart. If he was the son of heaven, perhaps he would not have thought too much. After all, with luck and the protection of the heavenly Tao, all kinds of schemes would be easily solved. The sky demon fell and was reborn. In the end, he climbed to the top of the world step by step, killed gods and immortals, and became the sole ruler of the world. This was the plot of the Son of Heaven. However, he was the villain and had no luck. He was destined to be an existence that was a stepping stone. Therefore, from the beginning, Ling Xiao saw himself as a chess piece that was placed in the game. As a result, along the way, he did not trust anyone easily. Every step was carefully planned, and his heart was full of calculations. Even if what he was worried about did not happen in the end, it would not be a loss to him. Now that he saw Zhou Yandao with the power of the sky demon, Ling Xiao was even more convinced that all these coincidences were not simple. Yuan, what's the difference between a god and a demon? Only by standing at the top of the world and controlling the order of the world can one protect one's desires. For example, if I was the one who lost back then, you would be the descendant of a demon that everyone despises. But now? Zhou Yandao smiled faintly and turned to Yi Qingchan. Now, I am the divine master, respected by all living beings. You are the saintess of the saint, the descendant of a god. Even if you are a demon, the world has to respect you and fear you. What's the point of this respect? Meng Yuan's expression was miserable, but she suddenly felt a little frustrated. What's the point? Some things are destined from the moment you were born. If you don't want to hand your life over to others, then you should work hard to be the god that controls the lives of others. In this world, only the gods are sinless and faultless. Zhou Yandao suddenly turned his gaze to Ling Xiao, and for the first time, A trace of doubt appeared on his face. At this time, he did not feel that there was anything special about Ling Xiao. It was nothing more than an extraordinary immortal appearance, a flourishing Tao, and a kind of will that coincided with the heavenly Tao. But he had seen too many such amazing talents over the years, but there had never been one who could break free from his control and swagger in front of him. God-slaying. How could a mortal bear the heavenly power of these two words? In other words, Ling Xiao being able to come here was the success of the Shengzhou creatures. What's more, Zhou Yindao could clearly feel that there were no more living beings in the saint. It was obvious that they had all died in the hands of this young man. Who the hell are you? Zhou Yindao, you have gone against the common people and used the lives of living beings to cultivate. Such actions deserve to be destroyed by the heavens and the earth. Ling Xiao's tone was indifferent, as if he was not in a hurry to make a move. Villains died because they talked too much, because they didn't have a plan or scheme. Sometimes, when it was easier to achieve one's goal by talking more, why not? Destroyed by the heavens and the earth? Just by you? Or do you really think that under the shackles of the heavenly Tao, 3 ninth-grade divine emperors can compete with me? Zhou Yindao shook his head gently. Wherever his gaze landed, the void shattered, and the heavenly Tao no longer existed. Then Ziyin, Xionghuan, and sect master Taishan walked out of the void, their faces extremely gloomy. It was obvious that facing the divine master, the only venerable in Shengzhou, even if they had reached the top of the world, they still felt endless pressure. Chapter 894. Sect Master Taishan, do you still remember what I told you before? Zhou Yindao's gaze swept past Ziyin and the other two. In the end, it only paused for a moment on Xionghuan before it landed on Sect Master Taishan. Back then, before I entered the Venerable Realm, you had a 10% chance of winning in Tao Comprehension Mountain. Outside Tao Comprehension Mountain, you had no chance of survival. The Divine Master is mighty. Sect Master Taishuan's expression did not change. Even his tone was extremely indifferent. With your vision, why did you come here to die? In the end, Zhou Yindao was still a little curious about Ling Xiao. From the beginning to the end, he did not take these people seriously at all. However, in the Shengzhou land, apart from the Foliaceae, who else could make the 3 rank 9 submit? Where did this young man come from? Only when you know it's impossible to do, it is righteous. Sect Master Taishan smiled faintly. Obviously, he was also prepared to die in this battle. Oh, so this young man is the master you've been waiting for? Zhou Yindao raised his eyebrows slightly, and his gaze became more and more playful. Interesting. However, young man, do you really plan to kill me with these people? No. Ling Xiao shook his head and looked up into the distance. From Zhou Yindao's behavior just now, it seemed that he did not find any trace of the ghost. In other words, since this demon general could hide in front of him, he had a slight possibility of killing a god. Oh, could it be that you still have a backup plan? As soon as Zhou Yindao's voice fell, the smile on his face suddenly froze. He suddenly raised his head and looked into the distance. There, countless spiritual lights suddenly appeared. They were densely packed and endless. At a glance, it was like a plague of locusts crossing the border. It made one's scalp tingle. Yes, Ling Xiao nodded seriously. Then, he heard a series of low shouts coming from the sky. Qin Wushuang of the Great Qin Empire of the Western Border leads 60 divine emperors of the Western Border to greet Lord Ling Xiao. A red emperor's robe appeared first, standing in the distance. His white hair fluttered in the wind, and there was a touch of moving affection in his eyes. The Taoist Liang Yi of the Eastern Border's Taishan Tao sect, together with 5 god emperors and 300 dragon guards, greets the Lord. We are willing to die for the Lord. Southern Border's Blood Shark clan patriarch and 60 god emperors of the 100 clans of the Sea region greet the Lord. Southern Border's Gone Heaven Divine Sect's sect leader Guzhan, leading 3,000 sect members, greets the Lord. Northern Border's 9 underworlds, together with 6 great monster kings and 30 god emperors, greets the Master Western Border's war god, Ning Tiance, and 10,000 god of war guards greet the Lord. Wuni, Miong, greetings, my lord. Xiao Bei Fa, leading 10,000 blood guards, greets the Lord. Eastern Border's myriad Tao Devil Sect's young master Fu Yunyao, leading the 4 great god emperors, greets the Lord. In a breath's time, dark clouds covered the sky. A large group of people rushed over like a tide. They stood at the peak of the sky and almost covered the entire sky. Even the weakest among them was a divine overlord. Almost all of the god emperors of the 4 borders had gathered here. Moreover, he called that young man his master. Zhou Yandao's expression turned cold. Even with his temperament, he was extremely shocked at this moment. Suddenly, he felt that he seemed to have returned to the situation 300 years ago. Was the entire world his enemy? But when exactly did he do it? And what method did he use to bring the 4 territories of the Shenzhou continent under his control? Ling Xiao stood with his hands behind his back, his eyes clear and cold. At this moment, there seemed to be a gentle smile at the corner of his mouth. Then, he waved his hand gently. An inexplicable wave of power rippled out. Then, several figures appeared beside him. They were Ling Tian, Chun Qingshan, Phoenix Rouge, Bai Jishi, Han Qingxiu, Lin Ming, and the rest of the Destined Ones. Even Bai Ling, who had lost her cultivation, was summoned by Ling Xiao to watch the battle from afar. From the beginning, Ling Xiao knew that if he wanted to kill a divine master, the power of the 4 borders god emperors was far from enough. After all, those in the exalted realm controlled the order of heaven and earth. However, it didn't matter. I placed all the Destined Ones in the same situation. With their providence, they might be able to kill a divine master together. As everyone knew, the Destined Ones were best at killing those below them. They created many impossibilities and gave you unexpected surprises. Moreover, with so many Destined Ones gathered together to fight for the same goal, even the heavenly Tao would be moved by them. You expect me, a villain, to cultivate step by step and then defeat the strong as the weak? Am I worthy? Divine Master Zhou Yandao raised an entire region for cultivation. I, Ling Xiao, will use the power of an entire region to kill this divine master. Even if the common people die, they will pave the way for my immortal path and forge my glory for eternity. Was Big Brother brave? Below the divine mountain, at the edge of the ancient forest, the void suddenly rippled, and a graceful figure in white slowly stepped out. She raised her head to look at the god emperors from all over the sky, and the corners of her mouth curled up into a faint smile. Oof, you think you can fight me with the power of the 4 borders? Young man, 300 years ago, I was already the enemy of the entire world. But in the end, I made this world kneel at my feet. Shock flashed across Zhou Yandao's eyes. In the end, he was not shocked by the strength of the god emperors in front of him, but by Ling Xiao's means. A young man in his 20s had almost unified the Shenzhou continent. Zhou Yandao, you betrayed your master and killed the common people. Today, on behalf of all the living beings in the world, I sentence you to death in the name of justice. Even if I fail this time, even if I die, I will kill the divine master for the world. Ling Xiao stepped forward and stood in front of everyone, his tone extremely cold. However, there was also a sense of righteousness that was as heavy as a mountain. Even if Meng Yuan and the others knew Ling Xiao's identity, he was still right. Demons were different. If seeking immortality did not work, it was better to seek the divine master's help. Since the shackles of heaven and earth shackled the immortal path, he would break the secular world and walk a different path. For the sake of all the living beings in the world, he was willing to fall into the divine master's hands and bear the infamy, all for the sake of fairness. Even looking at the tall and slender figure in front of them, Ling Tian, Meng Yuan, Nine Nether, and the others all had tears in their eyes. This is my brother, my young master, my lord. Even if heaven and earth did not tolerate him, his heart still persisted. Beneath his cold and cruel appearance was the righteousness of the highest heavens. Young master, I am willing to die for you. I am willing to die for you, my lord. I am willing to die for you, my lord. I am willing to die for the common people. Murderous intent filled the sky, intimidating the clouds. At this moment, whether it was the Eastern Border God Emperor, the Western Border Emperor, the Southern Border Demon Sect, or the Northern Border Great Demons, their hearts were in turmoil. The path of immortality was eternal and countless reincarnations. However, after tens of thousands of years, those who could leave their names behind were not people of outstanding talent, but people who sacrificed their lives for the common people. In ancient times, there was Xian Yuan, and today there was Ling Xiao. Young master, righteous, kill. Seeing this scene, Ling Xiao's eyes were cold and clear, and his body seemed to be surrounded by divine radiance. He suddenly waved his hand, but his body did not move at all. What does the death of all living beings have to do with me? What I seek is the immortal path of the nine heavens. How can I be shackled by the ordinary realm? Above the void, boundless spiritual light suddenly bloomed. It was as if a star had fallen from outer space, or like a moth flying into a flame, it charged toward the divine master without hesitation. Boom! Heaven and earth trembled, and the rhythm of the Tao ceased to exist. This battle would definitely be recorded in the annals of Shengzhou. Chapter 895. Ants. How can you compete with the sun and moon? Zhou Yindao slowly got up from the peak of the divine mountain and calmly looked at the sky. At this moment, there was no trace of panic on his face. Obviously, in the eyes of an exalted realm expert, any god, emperor, or divine king could be killed with a wave of his hand. Boom! However, just as he took a step forward and was about to kill everyone, the ancient array in front of him suddenly burst out with endless divine light. The void froze, and there was a freezing power that tried to break the barrier. Yi Qingchan's face was extremely cold, and snow was swirling around her. Behind her, there was a faint immortal shadow that looked down on all living beings. Zhou Yindao's expression turned serious, and he suddenly pressed down with one hand. There seemed to be endless divine runes in his palm, and he wanted to completely seal Yi Qingchan. Compared to the rotten fish and shrimps above him, the one in the entire Shengzhou that he was most afraid of was the former Lord of Yi. Back then, he deliberately let a wisp of her divine soul escape, because he did not want to alert the foliaceae of the upper world to know that this woman had died. And now, he had refined it, because he had already refined most of the ferocious nature of the creation. In another 10 years, he might be able to completely integrate it. In this way, even if the foliaceae were to come, what could they do? He would become an immortal true god in this world. He would seal the passage, block prying eyes, and become the true ruler of the world. However, no matter how heaven-defying Zhou Yindao was, he did not expect that Ling Xiao would appear out of nowhere and use the power of all living beings to kill a true god. As expected, the road to happiness was strewn with setbacks. Do you think you can trap me like this? Give them a chance? Zhou Yindao smiled faintly, and there was a hint of playfulness between his eyebrows. Even if I suppress you with one hand, I can still kill 100 emperors with one hand and suppress the 5 borders with one thought. Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, Zhou Yindao calmly stretched out his hand and pressed it gently toward the void. Endless divine runes evolved from the sky, and in a breath, it turned into a divine seal that was 100 feet tall. It went against the sky and blocked all the divine light that fell from the sky. Boom, boom. Heaven and earth rumbled. Ancient world-destroying radiance blossomed resplendently, interweaving and colliding. Boundless divine might swept out in all directions. This seal had obviously surpassed the shackles of the world, and it contained the Tao of destruction. Boundless visions emerged from the center of the handprint, and the 5 elements and 10,000 Taos lit up at the same time. The expressions of the emperor gods changed. However, before they could react, they were smashed into a bloody mist by the golden light. All of a sudden, the entire divine mountain crumbled. Seven-colored light mixed with blood energy rose into the air. Within a radius of 100 miles, the Tao laws and order were obliterated. Even the boiling hot blood in everyone's body was chilled by this seal. The Divine Master was called the Divine Master because he had already transcended the heavens and earth and stepped onto another level. Even though the monarchs were determined, reality still shattered their dreams. Arrogant. Seeing this scene, Ling Tian's eyes flashed with a fanatical battle intent. A shocking sword hum suddenly resounded in everyone's ears. A wisp of heavenly light lit up and turned into a 1,000-foot-long blade. It slashed down toward the Divine Master's head with the power to shatter mountains and seas. 3,000 sword intents pierced through the void. It was like the wisp of chaotic light at the beginning of the world. It gathered the heavenly aura of this world and formed the immortal slaying blade. However, what surprised everyone was that there was a wisp of blood running through the sword where the heavenly light was at its peak. It made the sword intent, which was originally an item of the immortal path, strangely have an evil aura. Boom! As the sword fell, heaven and earth mourned. Both immortals and demons arrived and cut off a finger of the golden handprint. Zhou Yandao's eyes turned cold. However, before he could see the young man's face clearly, a saber hum resounded in the distant void. An ancient and domineering aura suppressed the heavens and the earth. The emperor gods only felt their souls tremble. It seemed like they would be crushed by this saber. Kill! Ning raised the halberd in her hand and smashed it down. Wherever the halberd light passed, cracks appeared in the void. As for Su Yin and Lin Ming, their bodies were surrounded by divine flames that turned into seas. Blood guards set up the gods' slaying array. Boom! In the sky, divine lightning shook the heavens. 10,000 blood guards turned into lightning demons and gathered thousands of lightning intent on Ning alone. The divine halberd, which was already ferocious and mighty, suddenly became like a divine weapon of the lightning god, shooting out divine light. At the same time, the Sea Realm and the monster race emperors suppressed their fear and patience. They took out their spirit treasures and smashed them at the golden handprint. Boom! Boom! Cracks appeared in the blue sky, and the divine aura was terrifying. Wherever Zhou Yandao's handprint passed, countless experts were crushed into a bloody mist. They didn't have any room to struggle at all. The sound of battle was deafening. Demonic roars filled the sky and shook the nether tribulation. Blood fell like rain. Large groups of cultivators died without a trace. This battle was tragic enough to surpass both ancient and modern times. However, only Ling Xiao knew that all of this was just the beginning. The people who died in front of him were just pawns that Zhou Yandao had used up his divine power. They could also be called cannon fodder. The real deciding factor was Ziyin and the other two, who hadn't made a move yet, and Gue Ying, who was hiding in the void. Gradually, the golden light above the handprint was no longer as dazzling as before. Only the entire divine mountain was already flowing with blood. Wreckage was everywhere, like a purgatory in the human world. Ling Zhao's eyes were calm. He inserted the reincarnation blade into the mountain range. Suddenly, soul light fluctuated in his eyes. Then, the countless corpses of the dead suddenly struggled to get up from the ground and pounced at the imposing figure at the top of the mountain. The Yamasutra was originally a classic passed down in the ghost race. Its terrifying part was that the dead souls could be reborn. Of course, this kind of rebirth was only controlled by the physical body. The remnant souls turned into evil, and not the consciousness returned to the body. Even so, the scene of corpses running rampant still caused many people's expressions to change. Above the void, Qin Wushuang's brows were gentle, and her white hair danced in the wind. Immediately after, she also used the ghost art and swept through the central border. Layers of ghost fog rippled around her body. Her face was completely pale at this moment. Blood spilled from the corner of her mouth, and her aura suddenly weakened to the extreme. But right at this moment, numerous figures suddenly stumbled over from the foot of the divine mountain, and they came in all sorts of strange and boundless forms. As far as the eye could see, a sea of corpses covered the top of the mountain like the gate of purgatory had opened. Ling Xiao, I can only help you this much. Even if I die, I have no regrets. Qin Wushuang's delicate body trembled slightly. The death aura lingered around her body. She used her life force as a guide to summon these millions of dead souls. Seeing this scene, Ling Xiao's eyes trembled slightly. He raised his head to look at that elegant figure. At this moment, a heartfelt smile suddenly bloomed on Qin Wushuang's charming face. It was bright and beautiful, completely opposite to the ghost aura around her body. Difficult for 1,000 generations, calamity for 100 years. Willing to accompany you in this life. The will of the three realms, the eternal enemy. Sacrificing blood souls to assist you. Boom, boom. At the top of the divine mountain, there was an incomparably shocking battle. At this moment, there was no longer panic on everyone's face. What was left was a touch of decisiveness to die for their love and loyalty. In the end, there was no turning back in this immortal path. When one's love was deep, one was willing to fall. Immortality, the wheel of heaven and earth, they were all illusory and meaningless. From the day I met you, the rest of my life was absurd. Chapter 896. Boom! In the end, the divine seal was destroyed, and the golden sun was destroyed. Zhou Yindao's expression was gloomy, and for the first time, he looked serious. Then, he reached out with one hand and was about to suppress the thearchs, but his eyes suddenly narrowed. Then, he turned his head and looked at the depths of the divine mountain. Instantly, he was confused. Was it an illusion? Boom! The world lost its color. Demonic will suddenly surge around Zhou Yindao like a river, growing and multiplying endlessly. His raised palm had turned pitch black at this moment. Endless demonic might began to rise and fall. Even sect master Tai Xian and the others had completely turned solemn at this moment. Only Ling Xiao stood at the peak of the mountain, neither sad nor happy. No one could guess what he was thinking. Meng Yuan stood behind the crowd and looked bitterly at the tall figure in front of her. There was an indescribable, complicated look on her face. What kind of person was he? In the face of such a cruel war, he didn't even frown. But now, the experts standing at the peak of the divine mountain were willing to die for him. His cold eyes were like the deepest demonic abyss in the 9 heavens. Occasionally, he would reveal a trace of dominance, which made people feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. Was it deep love and righteousness? Or was he emotionless? Xiong Huan, Ziyin, sect master. Ling Xiao looked into the distance. Their demonic sun was slowly rising. The aura was very familiar to him. The will of the sky demon. The demonic sun covered 100 miles, suppressing the world. There seemed to be dark fire and ghost mountains descending. All kinds of strange phenomena appeared one after another. It was very magical. It was obvious that the Divine Master had used all his strength in this attack. The reason why he was so anxious was probably because he had sensed the abnormality in the depths of the Divine Mountain. That's right. Before Ling Xiao came here, he used a divine talisman to hide his aura and took Shi'er to the so-called forbidden area of the Divine Mountain. Then, his Dao body appeared in front of everyone. His purpose was to fuse with the Dragon Soul, so that he could have the opportunity to reach the peak of the world. Even if, now that all the god emperors of the 4 territories had perished, he could hide his true body in a realm and cultivate with the help of the dragon souls. It was only a matter of time before he stepped into the exalted realm. At that time, how could Zhou Yindao, who had only merged with 1 devil bone, be his match? Even though this would delay them for a long time. But for villains, safety was the most important thing. If such an astonishing secret was hidden in the tiny Shengzhou continent, who knew how chaotic the Azure world would be? Ling Xiao had already heard from Gue Ying that there were powerhouses from the Sky Demon Palace in the upper realm waiting for him to ascend. However, The path to immortality was unfathomable, and the human heart was complicated. If one's strength was insufficient, how could one have faith? For example, Yiluoyun used to be a vassal of the immortals. More than 10 ancestors died in battle, but in the end, he betrayed them out of selfishness. Therefore, they would support and follow you because you were strong enough or your upper limit was high enough. Only in this way would they have expectations and hope to reach the peak of the heavens once more. But if this expectation turned into disappointment, who would be willing to bet their lives on certain death? My lord, Ziyin and the other two nodded slightly, and a great force descended from their bodies. The three of them took a step forward, and their bodies turned into graceful birds that charged toward the divine master. Endless immortal light rippled around the three of them, forming the order of the great Tao. Among them, Ziyin directly transformed into the thunder dragon True Soul. Like a primordial demon, it carried the power of 10,000 lightning as it meandered through the sky. Sect Master Taixian stepped forward calmly. Divinity covered his body, and a clear light radiated from between his brows, releasing 3,000 Tao intent. Xionghuan, on the other hand, stepped into the sky like a demonic star and directly smashed towards the rising demonic sun. Solemn and resolute, there was no turning back. Heaven destroying 9 swords, 5th sword empty. Ling Tian's blood-red robe fluttered, and his snow-white hair emitted a lustrous, immortal light. However, his eyes were filled with a sea of blood that surged with waves. It was indescribably evil. A wisp of immortal intent shot out from the ancient sword in his hand, annihilating the void and disappearing in an instant. The void within 10,000 miles lit up with countless spiritual lights again. 9 Nether stepped forward, and a loud phoenix cry resounded in the world. A pair of fiery wings covered the sky, and he dove down like a sharp arrow. The remaining people, Gu Zhun, the Bloodshark clan leader, Ning Tiance, and the others, didn't hesitate at all. They all used their divine power and pressed towards the demonic sun. Tens of thousands of rays of light and divine light filled the sky. Waves of immortal chants, demonic cries rose and fell one after another. Thousands of meteors fell from the sky above the divine mountain. It was magnificent but also inexplicably sorrowful. At the same time, in the depths of the divine mountain, Ling Xiao was wearing a black robe and standing with his hands behind his back. At that moment, a golden array in front of him flowed with a mysterious light, revealing endless mysteries. There seemed to be the power of a seal within it, but it also seemed to be ethereal. It was obvious that the array was suppressing the Shengzhou providence that everyone was talking about, the true dragon soul. Let's go. Ling Xiao turned to look at the girl beside him. At that moment, she also had a look of surprise on her face. At that moment, she seemed to feel an extremely familiar aura calling out to her from the array. Seeing the confusion between the girl's brows, Ling Xiao's lips curved into a smile. The boundary breaker talisman in his hand stretched out, and both he and the girl disappeared on the spot. At the bottom of the dark and deep mountain, there was a pressure that made one's scalp go numb. It was just that the moment this divine might touched Shi-Er, it completely dissipated without a trace. Outside Ling Xiao's body, lightning blossomed, illuminating the entire space as bright as day. The next moment, his eyes suddenly narrowed. Before him was a vast underground palace that covered tens of thousands of miles. And in the depths of the underground palace, the silhouette of a golden dragon that stretched for thousands of feet quietly lay there, its tail unseen. Every dragon scale was the size of a person. They flickered with divine light and were filled with an indescribable spiritual aura. But, to Ling Xiao's surprise, even though this dragon's soul possessed monstrous might at this moment, it wasn't as ferocious and shocking as Ziyin had said earlier. Upon closer inspection, he saw a golden chain wrapped around its 4-clawed head. The golden chain was as thick as an arm, and countless mysterious inscriptions were carved on it. With just a glance, Ling Xiao felt as if the spirit qi in his body had been sealed and suppressed. It was clearly a supreme treasure. Buzz! Suddenly, the dragon's soul seemed to sense something, and a pair of eyes abruptly opened. Ling Xiao only felt a great aura of heaven and earth crashing down. Even with the sky demon body, he felt his organs shake and his bones shatter. A trace of blood immediately flowed out from the corner of his mouth. The will of the heavenly Tao. The dragon soul was a natural spirit that formed its own universe. It was the source of the Shengzhou providence. Even if its physical body was slaughtered and its soul sealed, such a divine armament that had merged with heaven and earth was still not something that mortals could withstand. "It's you, you're calling me?" Just as Ling Xiao's heart trembled and he was about to escape into the realm, he suddenly stepped forward and blocked his path. Chapter 897. The terrifying divine aura suddenly receded like the tide. Ling Xiao was surprised, and his tense body immediately relaxed. Unknowingly, his back was already soaked in cold sweat. Although a sentient life form only had a trace of spiritual consciousness left, although it couldn't intimidate Ling Xiao, it still made him feel a great pressure. In fact, if not for the fact that Ling Xiao had the body of a heavenly demon, that gaze would have been enough to shatter his physical body. "But who are you?" she muttered to herself blankly as she slowly walked toward the dragon's soul. Behind her, Ling Xiao's expression turned cold, but he didn't stop her. Since this woman had the bloodline of a true dragon, she most likely had the same origin as the universe dragon soul. In the end, when Ziyin told him about Shi Er's background, Ling Xiao clearly knew the use of this destined woman. As expected, with Shi Er's realm, if the dragon soul wanted to kill her, she wouldn't have a chance to struggle at all. However, she calmly walked to the front of the dragon's soul and gently touched its head. Boom! In the next moment, a shocking scene appeared. The dragon's soul suddenly shattered, and a golden sea floated up and completely enveloped Shi. The girl was stunned, and then extreme pain appeared on her face. A strong smell of blood instantly filled the entire underground palace, and Shi Er's body shattered in a breath. However, with the existence of the dragon bone, this kind of collapse couldn't completely kill her. Instead, it caused her to collapse and be reborn endlessly. But no matter what, the pain was real. Ling Xiao coldly looked at the scene in front of him without any expression on his face. With the spiritual aura contained in the dragon's soul, not to mention even he would find it difficult to completely merge with it. This was why Ling Xiao had decided to give the dragon bone to Shi when he obtained it by chance. Long Xian's undying and indestructible body had truly surprised Ling Xiao. And to completely inherit this dragon soul, she had to be reborn in this kind of pain again and again. Young master, save me. It hurts. Shi Er's aura was rising at a speed visible to the naked eye, but Ling Xiao's eyes were suddenly filled with a piercingly cold, demonic intent. Then, he stepped forward, intending to rush toward Shi Er. But before his figure could get close, his entire body was suddenly sent flying and heavily smashed into the underground palace. "No, Shi Er, this dragon soul is too strong. I can't go over." Ling Xiao stretched out his hand and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. However, there was no trace of anxiety in his eyes. Shi Er had dragon bones, but he didn't. If they were to fuse now, who knew if there would be any unforeseen events? "Young master, it hurts. It hurts." Shi Er. "Hold on, you can only do your best to fuse this dragon soul divine power into your body. Only then will I be able to think of a way to save you." In the underground palace, screams continued to resound, but Ling Xiao's eyes gradually revealed a trace of a smile. Now, it seemed that the outcome was set. However, with the vast divine energy contained within the dragon's soul, he didn't dare rashly place it within his territory. He was deeply afraid that the dragon soul would exceed the limits of his territory, and it would cause his most important life-saving trump card to shatter. The Divine Master was already trapped, and with the Tao body there wouldn't be any unforeseen events. He only needed to quietly watch Shi fuse with the dragon's soul and absorb it into his body. Then, no one in the Shengzhou would be able to stop him on his path to immortality. At the same time, a white-robed figure suddenly appeared outside the underground palace. He first turned to look at the distant sky, and a gentle smile bloomed on his face. "Little guy, you didn't disappoint me." As soon as he finished speaking, he gently waved his hand. An array of light bloomed from his fingertips, covering the ancient array and the underground aura. At the peak of the divine mountain, a great sun rose from the east, covering thousands of miles of space. Anyone who was enveloped by the demonic sun, no matter what grade of divine emperor, was instantly crushed into nothingness. Ling Zhao's Tao body frowned as he looked at the figure standing at the peak of the mountain. At the moment, Zhou Yandao was still restrained by Yi Qingchuan. An ancient token bloomed with a clear light, and it intertwined and devoured the sealing power, wearing each other down. This token was most likely the divine item that Yi Qingchuan had said was secretly summoning her. However, it seemed that this summoning was done intentionally by Zhou Yandao. In an instant, Ling Xiao suddenly thought of something. When he first transmigrated here, it was also because of the Samsara demonic blades summoning that he came to the lower realm and thus began his wonderful journey to this world. However, now it seemed that this trip to obtain the treasure was a little too simple. One had to know that the Samsara demonic blade was the sky demon's weapon, and it was a nine heavens treasure. Whether it was the demonic bone or the unforgiven demonic armor, they were all set up by supreme experts. The dragon bone suppression, the divine spirit formation of the mount, and Yi Liyun's original soul personally guarding it. All of them could be said to be extremely dangerous. However, there was only one remnant soul guarding the Samsara demonic blade back then, and it was the kind that was about to dissipate. According to Ling Zhao's original thoughts, this creation should belong to Yi Fan. However, something was still wrong. It was too easy. If someone had secretly helped him reduce the difficulty of the dungeon, it would definitely be Gue Ying or Ling Tianlin. Of these two, one was proficient in the Tao of space, and the other held the boundary-breaking talisman. However, what was the point of them doing this? Wouldn't it be easier and faster to directly take the demonic blade and give to Ling Xiao? Moreover, when Ling Xiao returned to the upper realm with the demonic blade, Ling Tianlin had expressed great surprise. If he was deliberately pretending to be this emotional, it was too far-fetched. Who exactly was it? Inexplicably, the uneasiness in Ling Zhao's heart surfaced again. He vaguely felt that there was an invisible hand behind this world, controlling everything. Boom! Suddenly, a loud sound came from the distance, and Ziyin and the other two were instantly sent flying, blood spurting from their mouths. The demonic sun finally pressed down on Ling Xiao with an unstoppable momentum. Ling Zhao's eyes narrowed, and he was about to use realm power when a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. White clothes fluttered in the wind, and a peerless beauty. Especially the pair of fox ears on the top of her head, there was an indescribable charm. Meng Yuan, Buzz, the demonic sun in the sky, strangely came to a standstill. Ling Zhao's lips curled into a faint smile, and he looked toward the mountain peak where Zhou Yandao was. A black moon seemed to be gradually becoming clearer in each of his eyes, but it seemed to be restrained by some kind of power, and it never really floated in the air. At this moment, a trace of surprise appeared on the divine master's face. His golden eyes trembled, and his raised palm was unable to easily press down. From the very beginning, Ling Xiao knew that this ambitious and ruthless person wasn't truly cold and emotionless. Otherwise, he wouldn't have spent 200 years to seal Meng Yuan's demonic qi and save her from the brink of death. Therefore, Meng Yuan was probably the only weakness in his heart. Whether it was a mortal or demon, once there were feelings, there would be openings. Meng Yuan had long since fallen in love with Ling Xiao. So how could she just watch him die in front of her? At this moment, behind Zhou Yandao, the void suddenly ripples. Then a figure shot out like a ghost, and the cold blade in his hand slashed down with lightning speed. The Divine Master's mind was filled with countless thoughts, and his moment of distraction was his opening. A wisp of bloody light spilled out, and Zhou Yindao's arm, which had sealed Yi Qingchuan, suddenly fell to the ground. The heavens and the earth were deathly silent while a strand of piercingly cold aura silently swept out. Chapter 898. You're courting death. As blood spurted out, Zhou Yindao's expression suddenly turned gloomy. Demonic light shone brightly around him as he slammed his palm down. There seemed to be thousands of demonic runes on his palm, obliterating everything. However, his palm was not aimed at the ghost behind him, but at Yi Qingchuan, who was about to break out of the formation. To Zhou Yindao, the Shengzhou powerhouses were nothing to be afraid of, but Yi Qingchuan was a true reincarnation supremacy. Moreover, the Foliaceae of the upper world were originally vassals of the immortals, and their methods were shocking. Who knew if Yi Qingchuan had the means to contact the Foliaceae now that she had awakened her memories? Young mistress. Seeing this, a look of horror flashed across Ziyan's face. When she saw Yi Qingchuan for the first time, she was already very excited. However, her young mistress was trapped in the formation, and she did not dare to make a move so as to not affect Ling Zhao's plan. However, at this moment, looking at the demonic light handprint that almost covered the sky, Ziyan's eyes immediately panicked. Buzz! Then, without waiting for Ling Zhao to open his mouth, her figure had already shot out in a flash, directly pouncing toward Zhou Yindao. Xianghuan, Ling Zhao's eyes narrowed. An immortal light filled his body. In the next moment, his figure also disappeared on the spot. Yi Qingchuan's secrets were far from just the Shengzhou realm. Ling Zhao seemed to see the figure of the Ice Woman in the Sky Demon's soul consciousness from her. Of course, this similarity might only be because the two of them had the same Dao law of extreme ice. This world was vast, and there were countless people with amazing talents. It was not surprising that they had the same Dao law. However, Yi Qingchuan could not die now. Boom! Boom! Divine light suddenly shone brightly between heaven and earth. Ziyin took the lead and appeared under the demonic handprint. She stretched out her hand, and two lightning dragons instantly appeared, shattering the sky and descending brazenly. At the same time, Xionghuan, Dao Master Taixian, and Ghost Shadow each used their strongest methods to stop Zhou Yindao. Boom! However, Zhou Yindao was an honorable realm cultivator, after all. Now, he even had the intention to kill. In the void, the Thunder Dragon's shadow only lasted for a moment before it was obliterated by the demonic seal. It turned into starlight and fell. Pucci, Ziyan's pretty face paled, her eyes filled with determination. But at this moment, a low voice suddenly sounded in her ears. Move! Hearing this, Ziyan didn't dare hesitate in the slightest. Or perhaps it could be said that with the soul imprint that Ling Zhao had planted in her mind, she didn't dare disobey him at all. From the beginning to the end, Yi Qingchuan's face did not flicker with a trace of panic. Instead, there was a faint smile at the corner of her mouth. Since he was here, he would not allow himself to be hurt in the slightest. This kind of reassurance was instinctive. It was also Yi Qingchuan's trust in Ling Zhao. Even if his enemy was the true ruler of this world, an exalted realm expert, so what? Thinking of you every day, I finally see you. The arrival of you is the arrival of the heavens and earth. Crack! Countless cracks appeared on the ancient seal, and a wave of cold air, as if winter was about to arrive, freezing thousands of miles around. The demonic seal finally fell. A sinister and strange black light engulfed the world, blocking everyone's vision. Boom! The entire divine mountain suddenly trembled for a moment. Then, countless cracks extended from the bottom of everyone's feet. A ray of demonic light rushed into the sky, turning into a demonic sea that covered the clouds and the sun. Just the remnant power of the demonic sea was enough to shatter the bodies of countless experts and obliterate their souls. However, just as everyone's eyes were filled with fear, a strand of immortal energy suddenly rose from the boundless demonic sea. Then, everyone was excited to see Ling Xiao holding Yi Qingchan's jade-like hand and descending from the sky. Her white clothes were shocking and untainted by even a speck of dust. Seeing this scene, Phoenix Rouge, Meng Yuan, and the other women's faces flickered with envy. To be able to be personally suppressed by a divine master, this green-clothed woman's background was definitely shocking. Moreover, there was a chill that could freeze the 9 heavens on her body. Just a glance at her would make one feel fear from the bottom of their heart. No matter how Ling Xiao had saved her from the divine master's hands, his lack of regret was enough to move people. Young Miss. Xian's figure flew over from afar. Although her aura was somewhat weak, the excitement on her face could not be concealed. You are Yena. Yi Qingchan smiled faintly. Her beautiful eyes were clear and cold, and even her temperament had a kind of innate coldness and nobility. It was obvious that the current Yi Qingchan had awakened her memories. Qingchan, I have something to ask you. Seeing Yi Qingchan's change in temperament, Ling Xiao's face suddenly became serious. Young master. Yi Qingchan's lips curled up. Her eyes suddenly flickered with craftiness, and she was as mischievous as before. Who was the one who injured you? That part of my memory was erased by someone. Yi Qingchan shook her head slightly. Her expression suddenly became serious. Young master, be careful. Ling Xiao nodded indifferently, as if he had expected this. There was not much fluctuation in his eyes. No matter who injured Yi Qingchan back then, and what their motive was, the creation of the Shangzhou was the Ian Dragon's soul. Now that Shi was merging with this item, it would eventually fall into Ling Xiao's hands. Even if his Dao body died here today, it would not be a loss to Ling Xiao. With the Ian Dragon's soul in hand, this world would no longer be able to trap him. Boom! In the sky, Zhou Yandao was fighting 3 great 9th-grade divine emperors alone. No matter how terrifying Gu Ying's methods were, it was still difficult for him to fight head-on with an exalted realm expert. Vast divine power surged in all directions, destroying the order of the heavenly Tao. It was very difficult for ordinary divine emperors to interfere in the battle between the 4. How dare a few ants kill a god? Zhou Yandao snorted coldly. A golden light suddenly appeared between his eyebrows, which was incompatible with the demonic qi on his body. Inexplicably, a terrifying aura of heaven and earth suddenly descended, transforming into the shadow of a golden dragon that towered above his head. This wisp of Ian Dragon's luck should be the one in the heaven-sealing ancient seal. Yi Qingchan's face turned serious. She turned to look at Ling Xiao. Young master, there is a true dragon's soul suppressed under the sacred mountain. It is a connate life form. With your physical body, perhaps you can try merging with it. Let's wait a little longer. Ling Xiao shook his head and looked into the distance. Zhou Yandao could use a wisp of Ian Dragon's luck to step out of this world's shackles. It was impossible that he had not thought of merging with the Ian Dragon soul in the past 300 years. Moreover, when Ling Xiao first saw the Ian Dragon soul, it was not as fierce and domineering as he had imagined. Instead, it felt like someone had tamed it. However, if the Dragon Soul was the greatest fortune in Shenzhou, why was he so obsessed with finding the ancient Glaze Pagoda? Qingchan, is there only one demonic bone in the ancient Glaze Pagoda? Ling Xiao suddenly thought of a possibility and turned to look at Yi Qingchan. No. As far as I know, there are 2 demonic bones sealed in the ancient Glaze Pagoda. One of them was taken by Zhou Yandao. The other one is above the 9th floor. Even I have never seen it. As expected, when Feng Ling first met Ling Xiao, she had said that there was an extremely familiar aura on him. It seemed that this girl's origin was closely related to the demonic bone. Qingchan, do you know Feng Ling and Bai Jiro? Feng Ling? Bai Jiro? Yi Qingchan frowned slightly and finally shook her head. Young master, my memories have been tampered with, especially the period of 300 years. It is almost blank. The only thing I remember is that Zhou Yindao killed me after merging with the demonic bone. Chapter 899. They've all been erased. Ling Xiao nodded slightly, not surprised at all. An expert who could severely injure Yi Qingchan would naturally have the means to erase her soul consciousness. However, she remembered that Zhou Yindao had fused with the demon bone when she reincarnated. Was this intentional, or was it just a coincidence? Of course, if Gui Ying could hide in the dark of Shenzhou, others might be able to as well. The only thing that puzzled Ling Xiao was that if this person was still in the Shenzhou continent, what was he planning to do? Boom! Just as Ling Xiao was pondering, Zhou Yindao suppressed the three emperors in the sky, the dragon aura and demonic intent intertwining around him. An ancient and vast aura rose into the sky, evolving into endless visions. With the presence of the dragon soul, Zhou Yindao's attack carried some of the will of the heavens. He reached out with one hand, and demonic aura mixed with golden radiance spread out brazenly in the sky, like a heavenly decree announcing the death of all life. Die! Zhou Yindao shouted coldly, and the golden and demonic aura overflowed into an ocean, connecting the stars and the sun, turning into an ancient heavenly palace that came crashing down. The heavenly palace was tens of thousands of feet long, and was somewhat similar to the attack that Dugi Yunjin had used. However, this one was completely formed by the demonic intent and dragon soul, and its power was enough to destroy the world. The 8 desolates and 6 directions, heaven, earth, black, and yellow, were all enveloped by the divine palace. At this time, many cultivators with weaker cultivation could not help but tremble and almost knelt on the ground. The evil souls summoned by Qin Wushuang melted like snow and roared as they shattered into nothingness. In the face of absolute power, all methods were useless. If this attack fell, most of the god emperors of the 4 territories would die today. Be careful, sir. This technique is a divine ability left behind by the Foliaceae in Shenzhou. The heavenly palace can encompass the world and illuminate everything. It is very difficult to break free. Yi Qingchan's face turned cold, and a clear light suddenly shone from between her brows. An ancient immortal token floated in the sky, releasing tens of thousands of rays of divine light, and completely enveloped Ling Xiao's figure. It's all right. Ling Xiao's eyes were clear as he raised his head to look at the figure standing in the sky. With the strength of Gui Ying and the others, it was likely that it would be very difficult for them to completely kill this Zune stage expert. As long as everyone persevered for a little longer, should be able to completely fuse with the dragon soul. At that time, the battle would be over. Follow me. Let's break his attack together. Ling Xiao took a step forward and stood proudly in front of everyone. At this moment, he wasn't in a hurry to retreat into the realm. Many of the experts on the sacred mountain were not under his complete control. Thus, they were still not qualified to enter. If Ling Xiao were to retreat now, it would be a huge blow to everyone's morale. Boom! Boundless divine radiance exploded. Ling Xiao's eyes narrowed slightly as a divine seal shot up into the sky. A mysterious Taoist rhyme of profound meaning spread out. Wherever the divine seal passed, green mountains bloomed and bloomed. Endless clouds intertwined to form a supreme path to heaven. It seemed to be on par with the dragon soul's aura. The Chaos Dao Law was one of the most mysterious Dao laws in the world. It was rumored that when this Dao Law was mastered, one could form a universe and turn one's body into heaven and earth. Seeing that Ling Xiao had made a move, the experts from the 4 borders, who were originally terrified, no longer hesitated. They all used their numinous treasures to attack the sky, shrouding divine palace. There was the sound of a sword chime that penetrated 30,000 miles. There was endless black flame and golden fire that burned even ghosts and gods. There was the Tao boundary. There was the heavenly punishment of purple lightning. There were layers of divine light and roaring demonic aura. In an instant, the void collapsed and heaven and earth went silent. Endless brilliance exploded in the sky, and a terrifying loud sound spread for 10,000 miles. There were layers of spatial cracks that stretched for 10,000 miles. It was as if the end of the world had come. Above the blue sky, thunderclouds covered the sky. Only the heaven-defying, numinous treasures attacks were like dazzling stars that streaked across the sky. Boom, boom, boom. Hundreds of god emperors, including 4 ninth-grade god emperors, gathered all their strength to attack. Its power was terrifying. At first, the sky-shrouding divine palace could still advance and destroy everything. However, gradually cracks appeared on it and instantly penetrated the dome. The world trembled as a desolate aura that could destroy one's mind fell from the sky, instantly killing countless living beings. Boom! However, although the sky-shrouding divine palace was terrifying, it was ultimately formed by spiritual power. In the end, when Xiong Huan and Gue Ying's attacks landed, the sky-shrouded divine palace and bathed the entire mountain in golden light. Zhou Yindao's aura suddenly trembled, and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. On the other hand, Sect Master Tai Xian, Ziyin, and the others also retreated. Their faces were pale, and even their auras seemed particularly weak. However, although the sky-shrouding divine palace was destroyed, the golden light still contained supreme killing intent. If it scattered like this, it would definitely cause great suffering. Blood guards, listen to my orders. God slaying. At this moment, Xiao Beifa suddenly let out a fierce shout. The blood-red robe on his body fluttered as he pounced toward the place where the golden light was at its peak. Behind him, the 10,000 blood guards immediately released lightning and followed closely behind. We are willing to die for the Lord. We are willing to die for the common people. The deafening roar pierced through the 9 heavens. At that moment, all the blood guards' faces were filled with calm and hope. Boom! The void was destroyed, and the heavens mourned. The figures of Xiao Beifa and the others were eventually annihilated along with the endless golden light. Young Master, Yi Qingchan and the others gathered beside Ling Xiao. When they saw the blood flowing from the corner of his mouth and staining his white robe red, there was a trace of sadness in their eyes. Especially Su Yin and Bai Ling, there were faint tears in their eyes. Given Ling Xiao's temperament and talent, sooner or later, he would become enemies with the sacred sect and fight for the world. However, in the eyes of the 2 girls, as long as the young master was patient and secretly accumulated power, he would not have fallen into such a miserable situation. It's okay. It's about time. Ling Xiao's expression was gentle, and his appearance was like jade. At that moment, there was not a trace of sadness in his eyes as he looked at the distant sky. If everything in the Shengzhou was set up by someone, then this was the end of the chessboard. Someone would eventually stand up, stabilize the situation, and obtain what they wanted. Clearly, the Divine Master was injured, but it was not fatal. Once he killed all the God Emperors of the 4 territories, the balance of the chessboard would be completely broken. Therefore, Ling Xiao guessed that the expert hiding in the dark would make an appropriate move to help the weaker side. The role he played was no different from Ling Xiao's plot to kill Duge Yunjin. When the sandpiper and the clam fought, the fisherman would benefit. The reason why Ling Xiao dared to personally participate in this situation was because this person wanted to borrow his strength to prove that she did not have the strength to suppress the Shengzhou. Or rather, her cultivation level was very likely not enough to kill a divine master. However, to Ling Xiao's surprise, nothing happened despite the suppression of heaven and earth. The mastermind he imagined never appeared. Instead, Zhou Yindao's expression became increasingly gloomy. The demonic patterns on his single arm bloomed, and he did not give Sect Master Tai Xian and the others any time to breathe. He directly struck out with his palm, suppressing the 4 9th level experts at the same time. Then, before anyone could react, his figure suddenly disappeared. When he reappeared, he was above Ling Xiao's head. Young master, be careful. Master. Everyone's expression changed, especially when the divine power that fell from the sky almost crushed everyone's body. If it were not for the immortal token above Yi Qingchan's head, the power of the venerable realm alone would have been enough to destroy Su Yin and the others. Kid, you're not bad, but unfortunately, you're too impatient. Zhou Yindao's expression was cold, and his tone was extremely indifferent. He still did not know how Ling Xiao had recruited the god emperors of the four territories. However, it was clear that this young man's temperament and methods were monstrous. Today, as long as he died, this great battle would be completely over. As for the aura that came into contact with the dragon's soul, it had already disappeared without a trace. It was likely that the dragon's soul had completely suppressed it. Of course, even if it was not, Zhou Yindao did not believe that there was anyone in the Shengzhou who could fuse with the dragon's soul with their mortal body. Even with his venerable realm divine position and the power of his demonic bones, he could not fuse with the dragon's soul, let alone others. Die! A shout resounded through the sky. The divine master reached out with his single hand, and demonic clouds spread over thousands of miles, sealing the entire void. Chapter 900. Buzz. Boundless demonic light fell from the sky. It was as if the Milky Way was pouring down, and a sea of stars was pouring down, rumbling toward Ling Xiao's head. In front of a venerable, even Ling Xiao didn't have much power to fight back. The shackles of heaven and earth imprisoned living beings. Not to mention that Zhou Yindao had refined a wisp of dragon soul qi, which was accompanied by the will of the heavens. But, just as Ling Xiao was about to take all the girls into his realm, he saw the void above his head suddenly ripple. A white-robed figure slowly appeared, as if he had pierced through the realm barrier and descended from the ninth heaven. A vast, ethereal aura began to fluctuate above everyone's head, resonating with heaven and earth. In the next moment, the white-robed figure stretched out his hand, and a green sword appeared, surrounded by endless divine runes, and slashed upward. Buzz! In the world, the sword suddenly rang, and the unparalleled killing intent made people feel cold and lonely. Who is it? At first sight of this person, even Zhou Yindao's eyes revealed a trace of surprise. Especially the unspeakable, faintly discernible sword rhythm on this person's body, which faintly caused the devil will in his body to surge, giving him a feeling of trepidation. Boom! The green sword rose, instantly shattering the sky and tearing the clouds apart. Heaven and earth were turned upside down, and the universe and time were frozen in the void, and then all of them were destroyed. And the boundless demonic light that Zhou Yindao had cast was finally shattered by the green sword and dissipated into nothingness. The white-robed figure put one hand behind his back and slowly stretched out the other hand, holding the green shadow that fell from the sky in his hand. My son is not someone an ant like you can kill. In the end, a gentle and domineering voice sounded from the sky. Everyone's expression turned cold, except for Ling Xiao, who seemed to have a playful smile on his face. From Gu Ying's words, he already knew that the Shangzhou continent was just an experience. With Ling Tianling's love for him, how could he not do anything? It wasn't that Ling Xiao didn't think that Yi Qingchan's death was caused by his father, but on second thought he dismissed this idea. After all, to Ling Tianlin, there was not much difference between Zhou Yindao and Yi Qingchan. Whoever sat on the throne and guarded the Dragon Soul would probably be the final boss of the Shangzhou continent. There was no need for Ling Tianlin to spend 300 years planning and risking exposure just to push a demon to this position. Moreover, Ling Tianlin had seen Yi Qingchan before. He was not surprised and did not make a move secretly. It seemed that what happened back then had nothing to do with him. But since his father had appeared, could it be that the person behind the scenes was no longer in the Shangzhou continent? Wait a minute. Suddenly, Ling Xiao seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes suddenly focused. Luring the enemy into a trap. Perhaps the mastermind had not appeared yet because he had sensed Ling Tianlin's presence. He was also waiting for all the demons hiding in the Shenzhou continent to appear before catching them all in one fell swoop. This was the first time that Ling Xiao had seen Ling Tianlin use a sword. At this moment, Ling Xiao saw a sword immortal in him. Even Ling Tian's eyes were filled with shock. He looked down at the immortal slayer in his hand and muttered to himself, "Qingshan, is the array in the divine mountain the only way to the azure world?" Ling Xiao turned to look at Yi Qingshan and asked calmly, "That's right. The ancient token in my hand is the key to opening the azure world. At the same time, it is also an emperor weapon of the Foliaceae. Only those with the bloodline of the Foliaceae can use it." Yi Qingshan nodded slightly, her eyes still fixed on Ling Tianlin. Ever since her memories had been awakened, she had vaguely guessed Ling Zhao's background. The only thing that puzzled her was how did the Ling people avoid the eyes and ears of the Foliaceae and arrive in the Shenzhou continent? Emperor weapon? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows, but Yi Qingshan had already explained with a smile. "Sir, in the azure world, although most of the spiritual treasures are Dao weapons, there are immortal weapons, emperor weapons, saint weapons, and supreme weapons." "I see." Ling Xiao nodded silently. "Qingshan, why did Zhou Yindao seal you here?" "He wants to refine me and the Foliaceae token together and then completely seal this world. At that time, even the experts of the Foliaceae won't be able to easily descend. This way, there will be ample opportunity to merge with the true dragon saint soul." Yi Qingshan snorted coldly, and a sense of absolute coldness spread around her. No wonder. Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. It seemed that he had to thank Zhou Yindao. If he hadn't refined the ferocity of the true dragon saint's soul, she probably wouldn't have been able to merge with it so easily. At the same time, Ling Xiao had a guess as to why Yi Qingshan hadn't died back then. After all, the Foliaceae of the upper world were vassals of the immortals. Back then, Zhou Yindao had never truly entered the venerable realm. Once he killed Yi Qingshan, it was inevitable that the Foliaceae would notice. Therefore, he had purposely allowed her spirit to reincarnate, to give himself time to refine the true dragon saint's soul. However, how could he be so sure that Yi Qingshan would definitely reincarnate in the Shenzhou continent? Suddenly, Ling Xiao thought of someone. Could it be that the first princess of the Nine-Tail tribe wasn't sent to the lower world by Yi Qingshan? Was she lying? "Who exactly are you?" Zhou Yindao stood in the void, staring at the white-robed figure with a grave expression for the first time. Even when he had been ambushed by Gue Ying and lost an arm, he hadn't felt the slightest bit of pressure. However, the immortal aura contained in the middle-aged man's sword had forced even him to avoid its edge. More importantly, even with his venerable cultivation, he couldn't see through the middle-aged man's cultivation level. "Since you're here, there's no need to hide." Ling Tianlin ignored Zhou Yindao and instead looked at the forest in the distance. Not only Zhou Yindao, but even Ling Zhao's eyes flashed with surprise. "Haha, as expected of an old subordinate of the Sky Demon. You guys are really patient." Suddenly, a clear and bright laughter came from the forest. Then, a beautiful woman in a similar white dress slowly walked out. She raised her head to look at Ling Tianlin and Zhou Yindao. When they saw this person, many people were stunned. Then they cried out in surprise. "Big sister, Bai Jiro, it's really you." Ling Xiao smiled warmly, but his expression didn't change much. From the beginning, he had felt that there was something wrong with Bai Jiro. There was a sense of vicissitudes on her body that had accumulated over the years. Moreover, although the various changes in the Shenzhou were caused by the divine master Zhou Yindao, the first princess of the Nine-Tail clan was involved. Whether it was Yi Qingshan's reincarnation, the whereabouts of the ancient glazed pagoda, or Zhou Yindao's accidental acquisition of the demon bone, although it seemed logical, it was too much of coincidence. The reason why Ling Xiao didn't act rashly was because how could such a person, who had schemed for 300 years, be easily killed by him? In the end, no matter what these people were planning, Ling Xiao only had one thing to do, and that was to merge with the dragon soul. All kinds of schemes and layers of fog were limited by one's strength. As long as Ling Xiao obtained the dragon soul and truly stepped into the venerable realm, he would have the strength to break through the situation. Therefore, he gave the aura-concealing spirit talisman to Meng Yuan, saying it was for her safety, but in reality, he wanted to see if the talisman could deceive venerable realm experts. In this way, with the power of the four borders, no matter what the Divine Master, Baizhiro, or the other hidden experts were planning, he would have the opportunity to sneak into the Divine Mountain and merge with the Dragon Soul. Everyone would die. The fortune would be in his hands, and Ling Xiao would completely break the shackles of heaven and earth. Chapter 901. Same to you. Ling Tianlin descended from the sky and stood in front of Ling Xiao. Ghost Shadow, Xiong Huan, and the others looked warily at the beautiful figure in white walking slowly from the forest in the distance. Her feet were as white as snow, and her face was as beautiful as a painting. However, compared to her appearance when Ling Xiao first saw her, the current Baizhiro had an inexplicable ethereal Taoist rhyme, as well as a trace of demonic qi that came from the same source as Zhou Yindao. Above the void, Zhou Yindao looked gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. He knew Baijiro's identity very well. It was this first princess of the Green Mountains who sent him the glazed ancient pagoda, which allowed him to obtain the demon bone and the power to kill Yi Qingchuan. However, he couldn't figure out how Baizhiro could walk out of the Green Mountains with the restriction he placed on her. Big sister? Why are you here? Baijishi was puzzled. She turned to look at Ling Xiao and asked, Brother, what is going on? If I'm not wrong, this is not your big sister. Am I right? Patriarch Yi Luoyan? Ling Xiao smiled gently. Tao patterns appeared in his eyes, forming mountains, rivers, and the sun. It was only at this moment that all the guesses in his heart were confirmed. When Yi Luoyun's divine soul was destroyed, Ling Xiao had his doubts. How could an ancient expert who followed the immortal clan, the patriarch of the Foliaceae who was ordered to guard this world, be killed so easily by him? The sky demon's skull contained the divine talisman of absolute beginning, which was the nemesis of all divine souls. Yi Luoyun had sealed it for 1,000 years. How could he not feel the divine talisman's aura? Therefore, that divine soul might just be a divine soul incarnation of her. Her real divine soul might have taken over Baizhiro, the first princess of the Green Mountains, 300 years ago. As for why it was her, Ling Xiao didn't know. However, the problem should be with Zhou Yindao. Ling Xiao could feel a trace of demonic qi from the Divine Lord's body. This demonic was not the will of the sky demon. It was more like the aura of his blood and bones. However, it was unknown what method he had used to seal the demonic will. Even Ling Xiao's eye of nirvana and the sky demons, I could not see through it. Of course, from the looks of it, it was most likely this ancestor of the Foliaceae who had severely injured Yi Qingchuan. You're smart. Yi Luoyun nodded and chuckled, but his eyes lingered on Han Qingqiu for a moment. However, I admire him even more. In the end, Yi Luoyun looked at Ling Tianlin with a cold expression. When you descended to this world that day, I sense your aura. However, I did not expect that you would remain dormant for several hundred years. Looks like the Blood Devil Emperor has fallen. Ling Tianlin's expression was indifferent. He didn't seem surprised at all. Apparently, he already knew about Yi Luoyun's existence. If it weren't for him, why would I need to spend so much effort and thousands of years to set up this trap? Yi Luoyun snorted coldly. However, Ling Xiao had many guesses in his heart. The inheritance that Ling Tian had obtained was probably the Blood Devil Emperor who had died at Yi Luoyun's hands. However, given the Blood Devil Emperor's cultivation, even if Yi Luoyun had killed him, his body would have been shattered and his cultivation would have dropped. However, as the master of the Foliaceae, she had set up a trap to lure out the hidden sky demon's old subordinates in the Shenzhou continent. Ling Xiao could understand. However, Why did she severely injure Yi Qingchuan, erase her memories, and help Zhou Yindao to ascend to the throne? Why did she pretend to be weak and hide in the lower worlds of the Four Desolates for several hundred years? Ancestor Yi, there are a few things that I don't understand. Ling Xiao stood beside Ling Tianlin and frowned. Since Yi Luoyun dared to reveal his identity at this time, he probably had enough confidence to fight the Divine Master and Ling Tianlin together. Ling Tianlin's aura was erratic, and Ling Xiao didn't know whether he had stepped into the venerable realm or not. However, according to the settings of this world, no matter how high his cultivation was, he would be like Ghost Shadow and couldn't exert battle strength above the venerable realm. Therefore, Ling Xiao's side was the weakest among the three forces. He still needed some time to wait for to merge with the dragon soul. Tell me, Yi Luoyun's eyes were calm and collected. With her strength, even if Zhou Yindao was at his peak, she wouldn't take him seriously, let alone the injured Zhou Yindao. As for Ling Tianlin, Ghost Shadow, and the others, she didn't care at all. Even the Blood Devil Emperor couldn't break the shackles of the Shengzhou continent. Otherwise, he wouldn't have died in her hands, let alone the remnants of the Sky Demon. She was worried about the opportunity. It means these people had to appear in the Shengzhou continent. Since Ling Tianlin, Ghost Shadow, and the others could break the realm barrier and come to the Shengzhou continent, they probably had a way to return to the Azure continent. In order to prevent Ling Xiao, the reincarnation of the Sky Demon, from escaping this world, she had painstakingly arranged many backup plans. Why did you kill Qingchuan? And who is Yi Fan? How did you know I was back? What are you doing all this for? Ling Xiao frowned and pretended to be gloomy. I wanted to work with Yi Qingchuan to conquer the world, but she didn't know what was good for her and didn't dare to betray the immortals. I told you before that when you were born, the Sky Demon skull showed signs. I guess it's because the Grand Primordium Divine Talisman kept a trace of your soul consciousness. As for Yi Fan, Yi Luoyun shook her head and gave Yi Qingchuan a deep look. You're so smart. Can't you guess Yi Fan's identity? You deliberately left the ancient glazed pagoda to Yi Fan for Yi Qingchuan? That's right. The remnant soul in Yi Qingchuan's body was placed in her soul sea after I erased part of her memory. My purpose was to make her uncover Zhou Yindao's identity one day and expose the fact that he has the devil bone. Yi Luoyun smiled coquettishly, but her eyes flashed coldly. You left the ancient glazed pagoda in the Yi family for Qingchuan to get it. But how did you know that Qingchuan would meet Yi Fan? If I remember correctly, Qingchuan's line hasn't returned to the Yi family for a long time, right? Ling Xiao nodded calmly. Yi Qingchuan would expose Zhou Yindao's demon bone. Yi Luoyun had obviously arranged this step for him. The Sky Demon would definitely find traces of the demon bone in the Shengzhou continent after returning. Hence, in the end, Ling Xiao would also stand against Zhou Yindao, resulting in this battle. But how could Yi Luoyun be so sure that he would meet Yi Qingchuan? I placed a fragment of a map in the ancient glazed pagoda. Although it's incomplete, it should be enough for Yi Fan to find a secret place if he looks carefully. Of course, if he's lucky enough to find any of the remaining 3 fragments, he'll be able to completely control the location of the secret place. In the secret place, there's a demonic blade. Yi Luoyun smiled. This blade is the Sky Demon's weapon. It contains the will of the Sky Demon. As long as Yi Fan obtains it, he'll fall into the demonic path sooner or later and lose his mind. Yi Qingchuan has the memories of her original soul and hates the Sky Demon to the core. In the Four Desolates, her remnant soul is enough to crush everything. Therefore, the demonic blade and the pagoda will both fall into her hands. When the time comes, she only needs to inquire a little, and she will know that there is a secret array in the demon race that allows one to enter the Shengzhou continent. Once the demonic blade of Samsara appears in the Shengzhou continent, you and the former subordinates of the extraterrestrial demons behind you will discover the clues, and Yi Qingchuan's identity will be exposed. You only need to search her soul, and the fact that Zhou Yindao has the demonic bone in his body will naturally be known to you. Chapter 902. So that's how it is. Ling Xiao was enlightened, but the doubts in his heart did not lessen. Yi Luoyun's plan was flawless and flawless. Every step was calculated by her in an extremely reasonable and ingenious way. Even the reason why the seal on the demonic blade of Samsara was so weak was probably because Yi Luoyun had done on purpose. However, with the methods of the Yi clan's master, since he had set up this trap, how could he not seal the devil will and soul consciousness in the devil blade and make it summon? Also, if Yi Luoyun wanted to kill him, she would have done it in the Frosty Moon Fairyland. Now it seemed that not only did she know about the existence of the primordial divine rune in the sky demon's skull, but she also knew about his identity as a sky demon. But she did not kill him. Instead, she took the initiative to enter his soul and become nourishment for the soul palace. Could it be that she wanted to use him to find the Shengzhou demonic bone? Or did she have something more important to do back then? Of course, even if the demonic blade was found by you old subordinates of the sky demon, it would not make much of a difference to me. I am guarding a demonic bone, and a demonic bone with the primordial divine rune. So, you will appear in front of me sooner or later. Yi Luoyun turned to look at Han Qingqiu. And what I want to do is to prevent you from ascending to the upper world early. So, I placed a pair of eyes beside you. A pair of eyes? Ling Xiao frowned slightly. Beside him, Han Qingqiu's delicate body suddenly trembled, and she let out a scream. At this moment, a clear light suddenly overflowed from Han Qingqiu's eyes. Then, another pupil condensed. Qingqiu. Ling Xiao's eyes narrowed. Han Qingqiu shook her head with a miserable expression. Sir, I don't know. I really don't know. I believe you. Ling Xiao nodded indifferently. Han Qingqiu's submission was verified by the system, so she definitely did not know about the trap Yi Luoyun had placed on her. It's just a medicinal pill, yet it's still thanks to the two of you that I was able to see so many secrets of the sky demon. Qingqiu, I should thank you. Yi Luoyun laughed mockingly. She clearly resented Han Qingqiu's betrayal. No, young master, it's all my fault. Even with Han Qingqiu's cold personality, she could not help but look at Ling Xiao in panic. Her eyes were filled with sorrow. She knew Ling Xiao very well. At the end of the day, he was a sky demon. He would never allow anyone to threaten him. Even if he was loyal and innocent, he would most likely become an abandoned pawn. He would be abandoned or even killed. Death wasn't scary. For the past 20 years, Han Qingqiu only had hatred in her heart. In the end, she risked her life to scheme against the saint. At that time, she was already fearless of death. What she was really afraid of was losing. Finally, there was warmth in this world, and the path to immortality was brighter. But in the blink of an eye, it was back to the beginning. Being born in the dark wasn't scary. What was scary was living in the dark, but never seeing the light. Ling Xiao was the only ray of light in her life that shone into the depths of her body, her heart. Qingqiu, why aren't you coming back to me? Do you really think a sky demon like him cares about you? Yi Luoyun snorted. As long as you admit your mistake, you will be the saintess of the saint in the future. Don't even think about it. Han Qingqiu's eyes were filled with despair. She suddenly reached out her hand and grabbed her eyes. In the next instant, she suddenly exerted her strength and forcefully gouged out those two bright eyes. Fresh blood flowed from her eyes, leaving two streaks on her fair and beautiful face. Phoenix Rouge and the others narrowed their eyes. They covered their red lips with their hands, their faces filled with shock and sorrow. Sister Qingqiu, why do you have to do this? Ling Xiao sighed and walked to Han Qingqiu's side. He saw a smile on her face. It's just a pair of eyes. I don't need them. I just want to stay by Master's side. Ha! What a touching pair of infatuated lovers. Fine, since you insist on courting death, I will fulfill your wish today. Yi Luoyun took a deep breath and swept his gaze across the group of divine emperors. So, all of this was part of your plan? Including my fusion with the demon bone? From the beginning to the end, Zhou Yandao and Ling Tianlin didn't say a word. They were shocked by this woman's 1,000 years of planning, especially the divine master Zhou Yindao. Only now did he realize that he was invincible in the world. He thought he was the only one in the world, but it was all a trap. As the ruler of the Shangzhou, the master of all living things, he was just a pawn that was being manipulated step by step. You are a demon. That's why you can bear the power of the demon bone. I'm different from you. I have the Immortal's brand on me, and I am an acquired body. No matter how many methods I tried, I still couldn't fuse the demon bone with my body. Later, I thought of one possibility. Yi Luo Yun smiled coldly. Her eyes shone with longing for the 9 heavens. As long as I can fuse with the innate dragon soul and change my body, I might be able to suppress the demon bone. When that time comes, with the sky demon bone and the ancestral dragon saint soul, I, Yi Luo Yun, will become the true protagonist of the world. Hearing this, not only Zhou Yindao and the others, but even Ling Xiao showed a trace of surprise. It turned out that Yi Luo Yun had been scheming for the demon bone and the dragon soul from the beginning. Once she fused these 2 fortunes into her body, she would indeed have the qualifications to compete with the heavens. So, you deliberately told me about the dragon soul, and you knew I was a demon. That's why you chose me? Zhou Yan now nodded and smiled. There was no anger on his face. Seeing his current expression, Yi Luo Yun's heart suddenly thumped. She felt inexplicably uneasy. It was as if she was the one being schemed against. Humph. Deliberately mystifying. That's right. I gave you the demon bone to suppress the dragon soul. It's been 300 years. I'm sure you've completely refined the dragon soul's ferocious aura, right? But there's one thing you probably don't know. If you want to fuse with the dragon soul, you must have the ancestral dragon's bloodline. Yi Luo Yun looked at Zhou Yindao with a mocking expression. In her eyes, this divine master was a tool from the beginning. Whether it was the demon bone or the true dragon qi on the sky-sealing divine seal, Yi Luo Yun helped him fuse with them to improve his cultivation. The reason she did this was not to stabilize Zhou Yindao's position and control of the Shangzhou. It was only to make him strong and greedy enough to help her refine the dragon soul's ferocious aura. As such, he had neither the bloodline nor the dragon bone. It was impossible for him to fuse with the dragon soul. Yi Luo Yin only needed to lure out the sky demon and all the remnants behind him to completely end this game. It was flawless. Oh, you mean you have the ancestral dragon's bloodline? Zhou Yindao frowned, but Yi Luo Yun chuckled. Her eyes suddenly turned cold. Why else do you think I wanted to possess a lower world mongrel? Why did I hide in the 4 desolates, where the spirit qi is barren, for 100 years? Chapter 903. Why? Zhou Yindao said calmly. Yi Luoyin turned his head to look at Zhou Yindao. I know that Yi Fan died in your hands, and that the demonic blade of samsara also fell into your hands. But have you ever thought about how an ant from the lower world, a human youth, could so easily obtain the demonic blade? That's because you've tampered with that seal. From the beginning, Ling Xiao had his suspicions, but he also thought it might have been Yi Fan's luck. But now, it seemed that the so-called luck and destiny were not chess pieces in the game of the great powers. But Yi Luoyin probably did not expect Yi Fan to not have the demonic blade of samsara. The demonic blade had been in Ling Xiao's hands from the beginning. Suddenly, Ling Xiao turned his head to look at the calm figure in white beside him. He looked at the half of his face that was calm and composed. It seemed, whether it was Yi Liyun's appearance or her story, his father did not show the slightest hint of surprise. Could it be that the demonic aura emitted by the demonic blade was really his father's or Ghost Shadow's doing? Did he not bring it back to the Shangzhou continent directly just to confuse Yi Luoyin? That's right. The demonic core of the ancestor dragon sealed the demonic blade. Yi Luoyun gave Ling Xiao an admiring look. When I was in the ancestral land of the heavenly crocodile, I heard the old crocodile mention it by chance, so I knew it was the only chance for my foliaceae. The demonic bone seal is concealed by formations and suppressed by divine objects. The immortals are cunning. Once I touch it with my foliaceae bloodline, it will inevitably lead to other unforeseen events. Only the demonic blade is in the lower domain and is suppressed by the demonic core of the ancestor dragon. Even if something happens, I can't just destroy the four wildernesses and the immortals will not know. Yi Luoyun described his every plan in detail, as if he enjoyed the pleasure of standing behind the scenes and playing with the common people in the palm of his hand. But I'm a human, not a demon. How can I merge with the demonic core? That's why I chose the Qin Xiu clan. Especially this by Jiro. She has a strand of the desolate bloodline, and she's in love with a devil. This is simply a heaven-sent opportunity. You spent hundreds of years in the Four Desolates just to merge with the ancestral dragon's monster core. Zhou Yindao shook his head and smiled bitterly. When did you possess Jiro? Is it important? Today, all of you will die. However, your deaths will not be in vain, because I have waited for this day for 1,000 years. Yi Luoyun suddenly raised his head and took a deep breath. At this moment, boundless immortal radiance surged around her. A pressure that was far more tyrannical than Zhou Yindao's rushed into the sky, covering the sky. Around his body, there were all kinds of radiances of order blooming. There were divine beasts, ancient trees, mountains, and rivers. It was divine and mysterious, revealing endless heavenly might. After today, I will be the god of this world. After 100 years, I will be the undying of the human race. In another 1,000 years, I will defy the heavens and slay immortals. All of you submit to me, and you will be able to witness the sacred path of our race. Yi Luoyun's white clothes fluttered in the wind, while her fine black hair fluttered in the wind. Her beautiful face was covered in a wisp of an extremely cold and ghastly expression. However, just as the emperors of the four borders were looking at the beautiful figure floating in the void in shock, they saw her expression suddenly change. She lowered her head in disbelief and looked at the position of her demon core. How can this be? This is impossible. Boom! In a breath, the aura around Yi Luoyun's body was shattered, and even the infinite divine might of the vision dissipated at this time. At this moment, her face was full of horror and confusion, and a trace of blood quietly slid down the corner of her mouth. How can this be? Who is it? Who is it? It's you? It must be you. What did you do? Yi Luoyun suddenly looked down at Ling Tianlin as if she had gone crazy. Especially at this moment, the calmness in the latter's eyes made her tremble as if she had been hit hard. Ling people found the demonic blade of samsara long before Ancestor Yi. Ling Tianlin smiled faintly, but Ling Zhao's face did not have the slightest ripple. Sure enough, from the moment Ling Tianlin arrived, he felt a faint trace of demonic might from him. This power was no different from the aura of the dragon soul. Obviously, the monster core that suppressed the demonic blade of samsara most likely fell into the hands of his father. As for why he did not leave the monster core for himself, Ling Xiao did not care. If Ling Tianlin's mission was to be a guardian, the stronger he was, the more useful he would be to Ling Xiao. Moreover, there was not only a dragon bone in the place where Long Xian was suppressed, but also a demon bone. However, no one expected that the demon race's divine ancestor would one day reappear in the world. Otherwise, the dragon bone and demon bone would have fallen into Ling Zhao's hands. Of course, in the end, they were still obtained by Ling Xiao, but the process was somewhat different. What? How is this possible? How is this possible? The blood at the corner of Yi Luoyun's mouth became thicker and thicker, flowing down uncontrollably. However, Ling Tianlin shook his head and smiled. In fact, the experts of the Sky Demon Palace also sensed the mark placed by Ancestor Yi when the evil dragon reincarnation was about to descend. However, the Sky Demon Palace had lost its power at that time, so we had to make other plans. Since Ancestor Yi dared to hide it from the immortal race, I'm afraid he was most likely selfish, so we decided to beat him at his own game. Ancestor Yi really did not disappoint us. You personally asked to suppress the demon bone and chose such a place where the ancestor dragon was born. You let the experts of the immortal race kill the eternity dragon and seal the time. Your original intention was to plot against the remains of the sky demon, but you did not expect to be so powerful. I just followed your wishes and brought here, using the power of the demon bone to conceal his whereabouts. Even if Ancestor Yi sensed the rebirth of the sky demon, I'm afraid he would only help us hide his identity. Speaking of which, we should thank Ancestor Yi. If it weren't for you, things would not have progressed so smoothly. You planned for 1,000 years to fuse with the demon bone dragon soul, but we have been planning for tens of thousands of years. Of course, there are unforeseen circumstances, so Ancestor Yi is still alive. Ling Tianlin smiled faintly, but Ling Xiao felt an inexplicable chill at this time. This was the real meaning of scheming, wasn't it? Even the general of the sky demon, Liang, was just a pawn and did not know anything. The path of immortality was vast and foggy. You thought you were standing on the 10th floor, but you would never know if there was anyone on the 11th floor. Whether it was Yi Luoyun or Bai Jiro, they had both briefly appeared on this path of immortality and told Ling Xiao many lies. Although Ling Xiao did not believe them, when Yi Luoyun died, Ling Xiao did not think too much about it. Of course, even if Ling Tianlin did not appear today, Ling Xiao would still be wary of the person behind the scenes who had never appeared and was only in his imagination. Sometimes, when the chess game had been set up for too long, it was impossible to tell who was the pawn and who was the chess player. Moreover, Ling Xiao had the demon body, but he did not have the memories of the sky demon. He knew nothing about the past, and if he wanted to truly break through the shackles and the fog, he would have to be meticulous and careful. Which of the heaven sovereigns hadn't lived for hundreds of thousands of years? Would they watch as an ant rose up, defied gods, and defeated immortals all the way to finally replace their position, and then use a F***CK and careless to brush it off? Ridiculous. Chapter 904. What on earth did you do? Yi Liyun's eyes were gloomy, and her face gradually paled. She could feel an evil force invading and entangling her meridians. As for her own spiritual energy, it was slowly being melted away by that power. It's nothing. I just gave you a monster core. The Blood Emperor came to lure you to the lower realm to find the monster core. He destroyed your body and destroyed your cultivation so that you would no longer have any misgivings. Since you want to be strong, you won't let go of the dragon soul demon bone. Everything that the old crocodile knew was part of the Blood Emperor's plan. Ling Tianlin's eyes were calm, and his face was gentle. In order to lure me into the trap, you sky demon willingly sacrificed a demon emperor. The Blood Emperor cultivated the immortal body, so I don't know if he's dead or not. But since you've been lured into the trap, let alone a demon emperor, even a demon venerable wouldn't be a problem. Fully ACE are vassals of the immortal clan. 18 ancestors died in the war of immortals and demons. No one in the 9 heavens and 10 earths will doubt your clan's loyalty. But you, Yi Luoyun, have hatred and greed in your heart. Ling Tianlin shook his head. As for the monster core you've absorbed, it's actually a monster core of the dragon clan. But it's not the ancestral dragons, and it's been tampered with by my clan's experts. Impossible. I used it to restore my cultivation to the venerable realm. If it's not the monster core of the eternal dragon, how could it be? You refined a strand of dragon energy and stored it in the monster core. Yi Liyun's eyes widened, and she turned around and dashed toward the horizon. Ghost Shadow. Yes. Lord Ling Tianlin said softly, and the ghost shadow disappeared on the spot. However, before he could chase after Yi Luoyun, he suddenly saw a spiritual light appear in the sky above. A terrifying emperor's aura spread across thousands of miles and turned into a seal, shattering the sky and pressing down on Yi Luoyun. Endless blood energy began to fill the sky, as if a god had traveled through time to arrive. Yi Luoyun's demonic core had already shattered, and his cultivation level had dropped to the first level of the God Emperor realm. In the face of this divine seal that could crush the void, He was unable to resist for even a moment. He was directly suppressed by this seal from the sky and fell onto the divine mountain. Boom! The entire divine mountain shattered with a loud bang. As smoke and dust rose into the air, a red-clothed figure slowly walked out from within. In his hands, Yi Luoyun's body was torn apart. His flesh was mangled, and his divine soul was sealed. There was no way he could escape. Big sister, Baijishi's little face was dull. She was in a dream. Although she did not have a deep relationship with Baiji Ro, and she knew that this big sister had been possessed by the ancestor of the Foliaceae, but seeing her body broken, she still felt an inexplicable sadness in her heart. Mother! Ling Xiao narrowed his eyes, and a smile appeared on his face. Plop! The moon of Xianyuan casually threw Yi Luoyun to the ground and didn't even look at Ling Tianlin. Shower, are you okay? I'm fine. Ling Xiao shook his head. Next to him, Ling Tianlin heaved a sigh and looked up at Zhou Yindao. Divine Lord, let's do it. Humph. Do you really think I'm afraid of you? Zhou Yindao snorted coldly as his deity might surged. Yi Luoyun had only herself to blame for ending up like this. Her monster core was shattered and her cultivation level dropped. Not to mention a venerable, even a 9th grade divine emperor could easily kill her. But Zhou Yindao was not only a venerable, but also a demon bone and a wisp of dragon soul in his body. Although he had been tricked by Yi Luoyun, his strength was real. Layers of Taoist rhymes appeared, and endless rays of light bloomed from Zhou Yindao's body, destroying the sky and eternity. The energy of the sky demon gathered in the grand rhythm of heaven and earth, then went straight for Ling Tianlin's seal of fury. Zhou Yindao had obviously used all his strength in this attack. On the sky demon's arm, there were thousands of demon runes flashing with golden light. They were evil and strange, but they were merged into one. But at this moment, Ling Tianlin's face was still calm. He slashed out with the azure sword in his hand, and an ancient and vast energy began to rise from his body. Under the azure sword, endless rays of light scattered and destroyed the great Tao and heaven's will. Wherever the azure sword passed, the laws of the void and time were all destroyed. This energy, Zhou Yindao's face changed drastically, and a hint of despair flashed in his eyes. When he had merged with the demon bone, he had barely stepped into the divine emperor realm, but he had not truly entered the venerable realm. It was not until he refined the true dragon soul in the heaven-sealing ancient seal that he became the sole ruler of the world. But now, he felt a wisp of pure venerable might from the white-robed swordsman in front of him. Venerable realm? Ling Tianlin shook his head, his face cold and arrogant. The sword light finally fell from the sky, like millions of divine rivers, instantly annihilating Zhou Yindao's god seal into nothingness, brazenly falling towards his head. No! At this moment, Zhou Yindao's mind was in a mess, and he hurriedly raised his hand to block. But even the remains of the sky demon couldn't stop the azure sword at all. A bloody light flashed, and Zhou Yindao's remaining arm was cut off at the shoulder. The entire divine mountain suddenly fell into a dead silence. Everyone looked at the white-robed figure standing proudly in the void like a sword god, and there was a hint of awe and shock in their eyes. Was this the young master's father? He was indeed ridiculously strong. Still want to run? Ling Tianlin took a step forward and chased after Zhou Yindao, who had suddenly turned around and fled. Then the azure sword in his hand rose again and suddenly buzzed. 3,000 sword wills fell like stars, densely packed and falling to the sky. No! Zhou Yindao screamed in despair. Golden light bloomed around him like a scorching sun, blinding everyone's eyes. The two of them, one chasing and one fleeing, crossed thousands of miles of mountains and seas. All the ancient forests and mountains along the way were crushed by the divine might, and countless deep ravines appeared in the Shengzhou land. A battle between venerables could be said to be destructive. But Zhou Yindao was already seriously injured, so how could he be Ling Tianlin's opponent? Therefore, This battle had already become a divine master. At the same time, under the divine mountain, Ling Xiao looked at Shi Er's body, which was on the verge of shattering, with a calm expression. At this moment, Shi Er had already revealed her dragon lady form. Her body was covered with golden scales, and there were winding horns on her head. But even so, her body was still collapsing layer by layer and being reborn. Even with the support of the dragon bones, the speed of rebirth was getting slower and slower. Brother, I can't hold on any longer. Sure, the power of the dragon soul is not something a human body can withstand. There is only one way now. Ling Xiao sighed softly, and his eyes suddenly flashed with a touch of evil. I know a strange technique that can combine yin and yang. Shi Er, if you are willing, I am willing. Brother, save me. Shi Er's voice was already extremely tired. Seeing her nod her head, Ling Xiao finally stopped hesitating. The unforgiving demonic armor dissipated on its own, and he walked toward Shi Er. Golden light sprinkled down, and the two figures gradually overlapped. Amidst the endless divine light, there was suddenly a spray of water mist mixed with the color of blood, and endless demonic intent surged. The entire underground palace strangely fell into a dead silence. Immediately after, a series of strange sounds resounded. However, Shi Er's shattered body gradually calmed down at the place where the waves of golden light fluctuated. Duong, duong, puff, duong, duong. On the divine mountain, countless figures descended from the sky, quietly standing at the edge of the ancient forest. Ling Tian's expression was lonely, but there was an inexplicable obsession. It turned out that this world was actually so complicated and unpredictable. From the looks of it, only his brother was sincerely protecting him. Not far away, Ling Xiao's Dao body walked to where Zhou Yindao's arm was cut off. He bent down and picked it up, and a sincere smile bloomed on his face. The Xingzhou land situation was set. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.